At 8:42 on a wet Saturday morning, I stood beside the pastry case at the new Grandma Vale Memorial Bakery and read my own name in 12-point cream-colored type. Family volunteers: Sienna Vale, Marcy Lynn, Benji Vale, Theo Park. The launch program was printed on thick paper with a gold whisk at the top and Grandma Euro's picture on the front. The one from her 75th birthday where she was holding a lemon tart like a trophy. Inside, Paige had a full paragraph under creative director. Aunt Maura was listed as founder. 2 local investors had their names thanked for believing in the Vale family legacy. I was between Why Euro Family Volunteers Sa Euro and Why Euro Sa Special. Thanks to our church ladies. Why Euro, Paige was already at the front door with the ribbon scissors in her hand, smiling at 3 phones at once. She had on a pale blue dress and the apron I recognized from Grandma Euro's kitchen drawer, the one with the faded pear stitched over the pocket. Behind her, Grandma Euro's framed photo sat on a small table next to a vase of white tulips and a stack of boxed sample cookies. Why Euro Sienna? Move in a little. Why Euro Aunt Maura called from near the register. Why Euro Jua? Euro reblocking the programs. Why Euro? I stepped aside, because I always stepped aside first and figured out what I felt later. There were 112 guests on the RSVP sheet. I knew because I had seen the clipboard on the prep table at 6:15 that morning while I was lining sheet pans with parchment. Maura had written VIP beside 8 names in red pen. The Mayora Euro's assistant, the bank manager, 2 women from the business association, and the investors, Mr. Bell and his daughter, who kept asking Paige about franchising before the oven timer even went off. The bakery smelled right. That was the worst part. Brown butter, orange zest coffee, almond paste. The things Grandma Euro's kitchen used to smell like when she would tap the counter twice and tell me, "Why Euro, you write it down before you improve it out of existence." Why Euro? I had written it down. For 11 months after her funeral, I wrote down oven temperatures, butter weights, supplier prices, test batches, waste percentages, and every change Oscar Lynn and I made in his old bakery space on Rusk Street. Oscar had retired 2 years earlier, but he still kept his Hobart mixer in the back and liked arguing about flour like it was politics. The orange cardamom knots in the case had gone through 9 versions. The lemon custard bars took 14. The rosemary shortbread on the tiered stand by the window had my handwriting on the original cost sheet, including the note where I circled Why Euro too much loss on Edgesa, Euro, and switched to a smaller cutter. But at the opening, my work had become a mood, a family feeling, a soft focus story Paige could tell into a ring light. At 8:55, Maura touched my elbow and smiled without looking at me. Why Euro Udana, Euro tea, make that face today. Why Euro you hut face. Why Euro the one where you look like someone forgot to invite you. Why Euro? She adjusted the collar of my white shirt as if I were 12. Why Euro? This is for your grandmother. Why Euro? I held up the program. Why Euro? Why am I under volunteers? Why Euro? Her eyes went to the front door, where Paige was practicing the ribbon cut with the oversized scissors. Why Euro? Pabecas, you helped. Everyone helped. Why Euro? Why I built the test binder. Why Euro? Why Euro? Sienna. Why Euro? She said, lower now, still smiling for the people near the espresso machine. Why WER? Not doing ownership language in front of guests. Why Euro? Ownership language. The words landed more like an office memo than a family argument. I folded the program once, carefully, along Paige Euro's photo so it creased through her printed smile. My cousin spotted me then and waved me over. Why Euro scene? Come stand by Grandma Euro's picture for the first cut. Why Euro? For a second, I thought she meant me. Then I saw the phone in her hand and the empty spot beside the tulips, just wide enough for someone sentimental and silent. The front door opened and cold air pushed the ribbon against Paige Euro's knees. A small crowd gathered under the striped awning. Someone from the business association started counting down from 10. Maura leaned close enough that her perfume covered the brown butter. Why Euro? Just be gracious. Why Euro? She whispered. Why Euro Pofter? Today we Euro LL talk. Why Euro? Paige lifted the scissors at 9:00 Euro clock. Exactly. Cameras rose. Grandma Euro's photo caught the gray morning light. I looked down at the program again, at my name tucked neatly where nobody would ask questions. And for the first time that morning, I didn't a Euro tea move where Maura wanted me to. I stayed by the pastry case instead of stepping into the line Maura had arranged with blue tape on the tile. The tape was still there, 3 small strips marking where Paige, Maura, and Uncle Len were supposed to stand for the first photo. There was no strip with my name on it. That was such a small thing to notice, but I had spent 2 years noticing small things for this place. Before there was a bakery with glass doors and a brass plaque, there was Grandma Valea's kitchen at 5:10 in the morning, with the radio turned low and the porch light still on. She kept her recipes in a red spiral notebook from Clinia Euro S Pharmacy, the kind with a cardboard cover that curled at the corners after it got damp. She wrote in blue pen, then crossed things out in pencil, then taped receipts inside the back cover when she wanted to remember which butter or flour worked best. I was 12 when she let me weigh flour instead of scooping it. She set a metal bowl on her old Taylor scale and said, Y Euro Sienna. A cup depends on how Euro S holding it. Grams dona Euro T flatter anybody. Y Euro that was Grandma. Practical first. Soft only after the dough was resting. On school mornings, I would sit at her yellow table and peel labels off orange crates while she shaped rolls for church luncheons. She called them practice, but people paid her in envelopes tucked under the sugar tin. She kept every envelope. She wrote names on them. Mrs. Donnelly, 2 dozen rye knots, paid cash, March 3rd. Mr. Alvarez, peach slab pie, check, July 19th. When she got sick, I was 19 and working the 4 a.m. shift at Marabola Euro's Bakery near the bus depot. I would finish loading trays of cinnamon pull-aparts, clock out at 10:30, and take the number 6 bus to Grandma Euro's house with a paper bag of die-old rolls for her freezer. She couldn't a Euro tea stand long by then, so she sat at the kitchen table with her reading glasses halfway down her nose and told me what to change. Why Euro glass lemon in the glaze? Why Euro, she would say, tapping the notebook. Why Euro people should chase it, not get slapped by it. Why Euro, that line became the lemon cardamom morning bun Paige posed with on the Bakeria Euro S Instagram last month. I don't a Euro tea say that because I think a person owns every memory in a kitchen. Families share food, recipes, travel. Everybody has a grandmother with a trick for pie crust or a soup that cures a bad week. I am saying there is a difference between sharing Sunday dinner and building a business from Semania, Euro S testing binder, equipment payments, and cost sheets. Then calling the person who did the work a volunteer because it sounds cleaner in a launch program. And if your family has ever called your labor Y Euro help a Euro after they used it to look generous, comment where you Euro rewatching from. Hit like and subscribe if your work has ever been renamed as help after someone else profited from it. I want to know how many people have stood next to a counter or a register or a folding table at a fundraiser, holding proof in their hands while everyone else smiled for pictures. Grandma died on a Thursday in October. The next Monday, Maura came to my apartment with a canvas tote and a sympathy card from the Vale cousins. I lived above a laundromat then, in a second-floor unit that smelled like dryer sheets and burnt toast. Maura sat on my futon without taking off her coat. Why Euro jar grandmother always wanted a real storefront. Why Euro, she said, placing the tote between us. Why a memorial bakery would keep her name alive. Why Euro? Inside the tote were the red notebook, 2 of Grandma Euro S aprons, and a stack of photocopied recipes with sticky notes already attached. Maura had written possible menu on one note and investor-friendly story on another. I remember touching that sticky note with my thumb and feeling embarrassed that I noticed the wording. Investor-friendly. Not family, not grandma, Euro. S exact process, a story. Paige was on speakerphone from her car. I could hear her turn signal clicking. Why Euro Sienna? You Euro Re, the only one who can make the old stuff work in a commercial kitchen. Why Euro, she said. Why Euro Yai can handle branding and the launch. Mom can handle permits. You can do the recipe side until we figure out roles. Why Euro roles meaning paid. Why Euro, I asked, and then immediately wished I had sounded less sharp. Maura smiled in that patient way she used when someone made a dinner table awkward. Why Euro JF? Course we Euro LLB fair. Right now, Leota S not make grief into accounting. Why Euro? So I nodded. That was one of my first mistakes. I let her put the word grief over the word accounting, and I treated my own caution like bad manners. By November 6th, I had opened a separate folder on my laptop called Vale Bakery Tests. Inside were spreadsheets for butter loss, yield per batch, oven timing, ingredient cost by ounce, and a document titled Grandma Recipes, Commercial Adjustments. I sent Maura version 1 at 11:48 p.m. with a note that said, Why Euro these are drafts. Please don't a Euro tea share outside family yet. Why Euro? She replied the next morning at 6:13. Perfect, honey. This is exactly the heart we need. At the time, I thought she meant Grandma Euro S heart. I did not understand that she also meant mine, packaged neatly enough for someone else to sell. By the second week of November, The bakery had a name before it had a working oven. Vale House Bakery. Paige posted the logo first. Cream letters on a pale blue square with a tiny rolling pin under the word house. She tagged the vacant storefront on Alder Street, even though the lease had not been announced yet. I saw it at 3:17 a.m. while I was tying my apron at Marabola Euros, standing between the flour bin and the walk-in cooler with my phone balanced on a crate of apples. The caption said, "Why Euro Grandma taught us that food is memory. We Euro re-bringing her table back. Us." I put my phone face down and measured 14 pounds of bread flour into the mixer for Marabola Euros morning focaccia. At 4:05, the first oven beeped. At 4:30, I texted Maura the revised cardamom bun formula because the first batch had spread too wide in commercial trays. Needs 18% less butter or longer chill. Cost per bun at current size is $1.14 before labor. If Paige wants bigger swirl, price needs to change. Maura replied at 6:02. You are a lifesaver. Paige has a call with the branding woman at 9. Can you make the numbers less technical? That became the pattern. Paige handled words like legacy, table, warm, and community. Aunt Maura handled people with folders. People who wore wool coats indoors and said things like local footprint. I handled the parts that burned if no one watched them. On November 15th, Mara asked me to come to the Alder Street space before my shift ended at Marabola Euro. I told her I could get there by 6:20 a.m. if I skipped the bus and walked fast. She sent back a thumbs up and the alarm code. The storefront still smelled like old paint and mop water. It had been a stationery shop for years, so there were faint outlines on the wall where greeting card racks used to hang. Someone had taped a paper sign to the front window. Coming soon, Vale House Bakery, spring opening. Paige Euros photo was in the corner, not Grandma S. Paige in a linen blouse, holding Grandma Euros wooden spoon like it was a microphone. Inside, the kitchen was half unpacked. Sheet pans leaned against the wall in plastic wrap. A used 20-quart Hobart mixer sat near the prep table with a strip of blue Paintera Euros tape across the bowl guard. The tape said, in Maura Euros handwriting, Sienna test only. I stood there longer than I should have, looking at that label. It was the first time my name had been attached to anything in that room. Maura came in at 6:34 with coffee in a cardboard tray and a black binder under her arm. Paige followed her, already dressed for the day in clean jeans and a sweater that looked soft enough to photograph well. She had a ring light sticking out of her tote bag. Why Euro a morning? Genius. Why Euro? Paige said, stepping around a box of parchment. Why Euro? You can. We get steam shots today. Why Euro? Why Euro? Gia Euro M testing rye rolls. Why Euro? I said. Why Euro? Uthia Euro re not pretty when they proof. Why Euro? Why Euro? Athada. Euro S, fine. EA Euro, LL, do hands and flour. People love process. Why Euro, Mara, set the binder on the prep table and opened it to a printed calendar. Every page had color-coded blocks. Green for investor meetings, yellow for construction, pink for media. My name appeared in pencil on 6 mornings, all before 7:30. I pointed at the calendar. Why Euro pair, these the only testing days. Why Euro Ufer now. Why Euro? Maura said. She clicked a pen twice. Why Euro W need enough to show progress without making this look too complicated. Why Euro? But why Euro Pit is complicated. Why Euro? Why I know, sweetheart. Thada? Euro SYU? Euro rehelping? Why Euro? She said helping the way people said bringing a casserole, temporary and sweet. I washed my hands in the 3-compartment sink, dried them on brown paper towels, and pulled my notebook from my backpack. Not Grandma Euros red one, mine. A black composition book with oil stains along the bottom edge. On the first page I had written, Vale House Test Log, because I still thought names made things clearer. Batch 1 began at 6:51. Rye rolls. Grandma Euros Sunday soup version, scaled to 36. I weighed molasses into a stainless bowl while Paige filmed close-ups from over my shoulder. Why Euro? You can. You move that notebook. Why Euro? She asked. Why Euro? Why? Why Euro? Why Euro? Why Euro Yita? Euro S messy in frame. Why Euro? Why Euro Pit has the percentages. Why Euro? Why Euro? Yai just need the vibe. Why Euro? Mara looked up from her binder. Why Euro? Glet Page get what she needs. Sienna. We Euro LL keep the technical files separately. Why Euro? So I slid my notebook behind the flour sack and Paige filmed my hands without my handwriting. At 7:18, the side door opened and two men came in with Maura Euro's husband, Uncle Brent. One had a navy vest with a bank logo. The other carried a leather portfolio and kept glancing at the exposed ceiling. Maura Euro's voice changed immediately. Brighter, smoother. Why Eurotheus, is the family kitchen coming back to life? Why Euro, she told them. Why Euro PHI is leading the public side. Of course, she has such a natural connection with Grandma Euro's story. Why Euro? The man with the portfolio nodded toward me. Why Euro wand? This is Why Euro. Maura didna Euro tea, miss a beat. Why Euro Sienna? She works early mornings in baking, so Shay Euro has been generous with testing. Why Euro generous? I had flour up my wrists, a thermometer in my apron pocket, and a cost sheet in my notebook showing exactly how much butter, rye, flour, yeast, molasses, and labor each roll would take. I had paid for the first 3 bags of specialty flour myself because Maura said reimbursements would be easier once the business account was active. I opened my mouth, then closed it because the dough timer buzzed. Paige smiled into her phone and said, Why Euro family effort? Why Euro? I turned back to the mixer, scraped rye dough from the hook, and wrote the time on a scrap of parchment because my notebook was still hidden behind the flour sack. The timer on my phone read 5:42 a.m. when the back door rattled. I wiped my hands on a towel and looked through the narrow glass pane. Oscar Lynn was standing in the alley with a paper cup carrier from Donalia Euro's diner and a flat cardboard box tucked under one arm. He had owned Lina Euro's bakery on Ash for 31 years before his knees made him sell it, and Grandma used to say he could tell an underproofed loaf from across a parking lot. Why, Euro jar? Aunt said, you Euro DB here? Why, Euro, he said when I let him in. Why, Euro AS, he also said, you dona, Euro tea, eat before sunrise? Which is nonsense. Why, Euro? He set the coffee on the stainless table beside my scale. The cardboard box held 6 plain glazed donuts, still warm enough to fog the wax paper. Why Euro Gia, Euro M testing rye molasses rolls. Why Euro, I told him. Why Euro I third version this week? Why Euro, Oscar nodded toward the Hobart with its strip of masking tape. Why Euro Sienna test only bold. Why Euro, why I didna Euro T, write it to be bold. Why Euro, I said. Why Euro Piche kept moving bowls for videos. Why Euro, he laughed through his nose, then pulled a folding chair from the corner and sat down like he was settling into a show. He had a blue Mechanica Euro S pencil behind his ear and a small spiral notebook in his shirt pocket. I remember that because he took both out before he took off his coat. Why Euro Pichau me your formula? Why Euro I hesitated. The black composition book was still behind the flour sack, and I felt childish retrieving it from its hiding spot. Oscar watched me lift the 50-pound bag of North Star rye just enough to slide the notebook free. He didn't a Euro T comment. On the page for February 18th, I had written, Batch R3, 4:55 a.m. Kitchen temp 67. Water temp 82. Target dough 76. Under that were columns 4 grams, Baccara, Euro S percentage, supplier, unit price, yield, and labor minutes. I had crossed out 12 ounces of molasses and written 10 in the margin. Oscar held the notebook with clean hands, thumbs on the edges. Why Euro Jew built this like a production sheet. Why Euro Athata? Euro S? What Maura asked for. Why Euro I said. Why Euro IC said investors dona? Euro T like family recipes that canna Euro T be scaled. Why Euro IC tapped the line where I had calculated cost per finished roll at $1.14 before packaging. Why Euro wand who taught you to price yeast by batch instead of by guess. Why Euro Jew dead when I was 16 and ruining your cinnamon twists. Why Euro why? I remember. Why Euro why? He said. Why Euro Jew cried into the dish sink. Why Euro why did not cry into the sink. Why Euro why did not cry into the sink. Why Euro why Jew absolutely did. Then you fixed the dough. Why Juo? The rolled dough came off the hook tacky, with the rye pulling darker against the bowl. Oscar stood and watched me weigh 10 pieces at 92 grams each, then corrected my bench flour with 2 fingers. Why Euro too much and you Euro LL lie to yourself about hydration? Why Euro? He said. I wrote that down on the parchment scrap, then copied it into the notebook once my hands were clean. Oscar noticed every entry. He made me add yield after bake, trim loss, proof time, oven position, and cooling weight. At 6:31, he took one of the baked rolls, split it with a plastic knife, and pressed the crumb. Why Euro closer? Why Euro? He said. Y euro molasses is better at 10. Salt can go up a hair. What a euro s your butter price. Y euro. I flipped to the receipt envelope I kept inside the back cover. It was a white bank envelope from First County with the flap torn crooked. Inside were receipts from Barlow Restaurant Supply, Sunfield Mill, and the cash and carry on Route 6. I had circled $38.74 for the rye flour, $16.20 for unsalted butter, and $9.48 for molasses. Then written Y euro powding reimbursement, MV in blue pen. Oscar held the Sunfield receipt under the fluorescent light. Y euro teeth is your debit card. Y euro Piminane is on the bottom. Y euro Y said. Y euro Umora said the business account would open after the lease paperwork. Y euro. He lowered the receipt. Y euro keep these together. Y euro, yeah I am. Y euro, no. Sienna. Keep them like someone may ask you who paid and who worked. Y euro. The ovens hummed behind him. Outside, Page a euro S ring light still leaned against the wall near the unopened pastry case. And Mora euro S investor binder sat on the front counter with colored tabs sticking out like flags. Oscar looked from the binder to my notebook, then back to me. Y euro pair, they giving you a title? I busied myself sliding rolls onto the cooling rack. Y euro Umora, said we euro detox once the menu was final. Y euro a thought is not a title. Y euro Y I know. Y euro. He did not push after that. He took his Mechanica Euro S pencil and wrote on the bottom of my February 18th page, Observed Test Batch R3, Yield Notes and Cost Sheet by Sienna Vale. 6:44 a.m. Oscar Lynn. Then he signed his name in the cramped handwriting I recognized from old bakery invoices Grandma kept in a shoebox. I stared at it longer than I should have. Oscar closed the notebook and handed it back. Y euro recipes are a memory until somebody sells them. Then they are a work product. Y euro. At 7:03, Mora unlocked the front door with Paige behind her, both carrying garment bags for a photo shoot. Paige wrinkled her nose at the cooling rack. Y euro you can, we move those. I need the counter clean for the grandma apron reel. I slid the notebook back into the flour sack shadow and picked up the tray with both hands. Mora glanced at Oscar, then at me. Y euro you wonderful. Oscar came to encourage our little recipe morning. Y euro Oscar did not smile. He picked up his coffee and said, I came to watch Sienna work. Y euro. Mora euro's mouth tightened around the word wonderful, like it had gone stale. Paige was by the front window, holding Grandma Euro S blue apron against her dress and checking herself in the black glass. It was 6:42 a.m., still dark enough outside that the bakery reflected us back in layers. Oscar at the table, me with flour on my sleeve, Mara with her phone open to a color-coded checklist. Y euro JY euro real working. Y euro, Mara said, tapping her screen. Y euro Athata. Euro S, the point of a family memorial bakery. Y euro, Oscar took a slow sip of coffee. Y euro working has names attached to it. Y euro. I reached for my notebook before Mora could ask to see it. I slid it into my canvas bag beside the First County envelope and zipped the bag halfway, leaving the pull tab tucked under the strap. It was a small, nervous motion. I remember it because Mara noticed. She smiled without showing her teeth. Y euro Sienna Dona euro TB precious. We euro re all protecting your grandmother euro S memory. Y euro Paige turned from the window. Y euro you can. We not do this before the apron shoot? The light is good in 10 minutes. Y euro. Mora clapped once. Quiet and controlled. Y euro exactly Sienna. You can help wipe the Hobart. It photographs better when the bowl is on. Y euro. The Hobart was not ours yet. It sat near the back wall on a pallet from Barrage Restaurant Supply, wrapped in cloudy plastic with a yellow tag wired to the safety guard. Used Hobart HL20020QT bench model was printed in thick marker. I had found it 3 weeks earlier after calling 5 suppliers during my lunch break at Briar Street Bakery. The new ones were too expensive. This one had a chipped speed lever and a bowl that needed polishing, but the motor sounded even. Y euro W Shadana euro T take pictures with it until the deposit clears. Y euro I said. Mora glanced at Paige, then back at me. Y euro Yida. Euro S handled. Y euro Yida euro S reserved. Y euro I said. Y euro Othea. Euro reholding it until Friday. Y euro. That was when Mora euro S phone rang. She looked at the screen and walked toward the hallway by the restrooms. Y euro Yida euro S Barrage. Y euro I stayed where I was, one hand on the edge of the prep table. I could hear enough through the open door, because Mr. Barrage had the kind of voice that carried through metal shelving and tile. Why euro, guys? This is Mora Vale. Why euro, she said. Why euro Ophir Vale Memorial Bakery? Why euro a pause? Why euro no? My niece is here, Sienna. She does some of the kitchen errands. Why euro? Oscar looked at me over his paper cup. Mora lowered her voice, but I still caught pieces. Why euro W can put it on the business card once the account is finalized at a euro, yes. Friday is finia euro no. I understand you need someone to pay today. Why euro? She came back into the kitchen with her phone pressed against her palm. Why euro, Sienna? Why euro, she said softly. Why euro cuckooed? You cover the deposit just for the week. Why euro? Paige made a face at the mixer. Why euro, moom? The photos are today. Why euro? Mora ignored her. She stepped closer to me. Why euro Yita? Euro S $400. We need the equipment and the opening photos for the investor packet. Once the bakery account is fully active, IA euro LL reimburse you. You know IA euro M, good for it. $400 was nearly 2 weeks of my rent share. I should have asked for a written agreement right there. Instead, I thought of the R3 dough smearing up the side of my cheap home mixer, the burnt smell when the motor strained, Grandma Euro S molasses rolls needing a real hook if we were going to scale them. I also thought of Mara Euro S phrase, kitchen errands. Why I need the invoice in my email. Why Euro, I said. Mara blinked. Why Euro gave course. Why Euro no reimbursement through cash. Why euro, I added, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Why I need the receipt showing my card. Why euro, Oscar set his cup down. Why euro athata, euro S, reasonable. Why euro, Mora euro S, cheek twitched. Why euro affine call them. Why euro. So I did. At 6:58 a.m., standing beside the mop sink with Paige sighing at the window, I called Barrage Restaurant Supply. Mr. Barrage emailed the invoice while I was still on the phone. The subject line landed in my inbox at 7:03 a.m. Invoice 4,471, Vale Memorial Bakery, Hobart HL 200 deposit. The billing contact said Sienna Vale. The delivery address was 18 Juniper Lane. The old locksmith shop Mora had leased for the bakery. The subtotal read $400. Deposit toward used Hobart mixer. Balance due $1,250 upon pickup or delivery. Below that was a line in smaller print. Deposit paid by Visa ending 6,118. My debit card? I stood there with my thumb hovering over the screen, then tapped forward and sent a copy to myself at my older email to the one from high school that I barely used. Then I saved the PDF to my phone files under a folder named Vale Recipes. It was clumsy and obvious, but it was mine. Mora watched the confirmation screen. Why euro, a thank you, sweetheart. See? This is how family gets something built. Why euro? Paige was already tying Grandma Euro S apron around her waist. Why euro you can someone move the flour sacks into the shot? It looks more authentic. Why euro? Oscar walked past me to the mixer and pulled the yellow Barrage tag forward so the number faced out. Why euro Tatesack? Your pictures. Why euro, he said. Why euro tags show up in photos too. Why euro? Mora gave him a polite laugh that did not match her eyes. I wiped the stainless bowl with a clean towel, then folded the towel and placed it under the pallet edge to stop it rocking. While Paige posed with one hand on the mixer guard, Mara took 27 photos on portrait mode. In the best one, the blue apron looked sweet, the mixer looked permanent, and my $400 deposit was hanging from the safety guard in yellow wire, plain enough for anyone who zoomed in. After Paige finished her photos, Mara sent her to the front window with a roll of Paintera Euro S tape and the temporary hours sign. I stayed by the back door with Oscar, checking the Hobart Euro S power cord against a wall outlet because the old locksmith shop still had odd plates and blank covers everywhere. At 2:18 p.m., Mora came out of the little office that used to be the key cutting room, holding a cream folder against her chest. Why Euro Sienna? Can you come to Leah Euro's office with me? Why Euro? She asked. Why Euro Yita? Euro S, just lease housekeeping. You know where we put things. Why Euro? I looked at the half-impact box of sheet pans beside my foot. Why Euro Dodo? You need Paige. Euro Why Euro PHS, a live stream at 3. This is boring paperwork. Why Euro? Oscar was coiling an extension cord. He glanced at me once, the kind of glance that said, take your bag. So I wiped my hands, put invoice 4,471 back in the side pocket of my canvas tote, and followed Mora out through the alley. Leah Mercera Euro's office was above a dentist on Alder Street, 12 minutes from Juniper Lane if the light at Hawthorne behaved. Mora drove her white Subaru with a bakery sample box on the back seat. 6 blueberry crumb muffins I had tested 3 times the week before because Paige wanted Y tall tops for photos. Y the box had a square gold sticker on it that read Grandma Vale Memorial Bakery, opening soon. Leah Euro's receptionist gave U.S. visitor stickers at 2:41 p.m. and pointed to a conference room with a glass wall. There were 3 pens laid out beside a lease packet, each with a little yellow flag where someone needed to initial the top page. Said Commercial Lease Amendment, 18 Juniper Lane, and underneath it listed Mora Vale as managing member for Vale Memorial Bakery LLC. I had seen the LLC name before, on Mora S laptop, but never on paper. Seeing it above the address made me sit straighter. Leah came in with a mug of tea and a thin stack of loose pages. She was in her 40s, neat gray blazer, reading glasses pushed up on her head. Y Umora. Good? Sienna. Nice to finally meet you. Your aunt said you were the recipe person. Y Mara S. Smile tightened. Y Shay S. Been helping. We all have. Y Leah set the loose pages beside the lease. Y right. I reviewed the notes you emailed last night. Before I witness the amendment, I want the contribution language clarified. It is informal, but if investors are relying on a family origin story, accuracy matters. Y Mora reached for the top sheet too quickly. Y at that was just a family note. Y Leah did not let go of it. YIT names people and contributions. Y I looked down. The page was a scan of yellow legal paper, crooked at the bottom, with Grandma Euro's old magnet calendar visible in one corner. In Mora Euro's handwriting, it said, Partnership Talking Points, January 9th. Under that were bullets. Mora Lease and Investor Meetings. Page, Branding and Launch Content. Sienna, Recipe Development, Test Bakes, Cost Sheets, Supplier Sourcing, Oscar Equipment Advice. Beside my line, someone had added in blue pen. Y Grandma S-based recipes adapted for retail yield. Y my face got hot. And I hated that my first instinct was to make it smaller. I didn't a T know that was in the packet. Y Leah looked at me over her glasses. Y did you prepare cost sheets? Y jize. Y I said. My voice came out quiet, so I cleared my throat. Y offer the orange cardamom buns, the pecan shortbread, the blueberry crumb muffins, and the sandwich bread. I also did the first vendor list. Y Mora gave a soft laugh meant for Leah, not for me. Y Sienna is very organized. She made spreadsheets because she likes spreadsheets. Y why I made them? Because you asked what the margin would be if butter went over $4 a pound. Y I said. Leah wrote something on a small white notepad. The pen made a dry tapping sound at the end of each line. Y where you paid for that work. Y Mora answered before I did. Y TS is a memorial project. Everyone is contributing. Y Leah turned the notepad toward herself again. Y that is not an answer to the payment question. Y I sat with my tote strap twisted around my fingers. I could see the corner of the barrage invoice through the pocket. The PDF printout I had made at the library because Mora S printer was always out of cyan. I did not pull it out. I should have. I was still measuring every sentence against Grandma S name. As if asking for credit would bruise the recipe cards in the tin. Y yai haven't a T been paid? Y I said. Y some supplies were reimbursed. Some were not. Y Mora leaned back. Y W can tidy that up later. Y Leah slid the yellow legal page scan into a clear sleeve and clipped it behind the lease amendment. Y Gia M going to keep this with my witness file. If there are releases or investor disclosures later, this note needs to match them. Y Mora S. Hand stilled on the table. At 3:07 p.m., she initialed the lease amendment with a black Mercer legal pen. I watched the ink dry under the overhead light, and for the first time, my name was not just floating around in kitchen talk. It was sitting in Leah Mercera S file, beside the address, the LLC, and Mora S signature. Mora did not mention Leah S warning in the car. She drove me back from Alder Street with both hands high on the steering wheel, her phone buzzing in the cup holder every few minutes. At 3:24 p.m., page A Euro's name flashed across the screen with 3 cupcake emojis. Maura let it ring out, then said, "We need everyone calm this week. Your grandmother would hate tension around food. Why Euro?" I looked out at the hardware store parking lot sliding past the window. "Why Euro Glia?" said the releases need to match the note. "Why Euro as he?" said a lot of careful lawyer things. "Why Euro Maura replied. "Why Euro Athata? Euro S what we pay her for. Why Euro?" I was not sure if that meant she had heard the warning or filed it away as one more inconvenience. 2 evenings later, on Thursday, I went to the bakery after my shift at Sweetbriar. The storefront was still half covered in brown paper, with Paintera Euro S tape holding the corners down. Inside, the floor smelled like lemon cleaner and new plywood. Paige was at the front counter with a laptop open, choosing between 2 shades of cream for the pastry boxes. At the back prep table sat a stack of printed labels. Why Euro Grandma Valea Euro S Brown Butter Pear Bars. Why Euro 1 Read. Why Euro Umade from a beloved family memory. Why Euro? I picked one up and traced the line under the product name. Why Euro? This was the version Oscar and I changed in November. Why Euro? I said. Why Euro? The first one leaked butter through the crust. Why Euro? Paige glanced up. Why Euro? Right, the kitchen day. Theta Euro SY, Ite Euro S, a memory. Why Euro Pit was 6 kitchen days. Why Euro? I said. Why Euro Wand? The pear filling has the starch adjustment from my notebook. Why Euro? Maura came out of the office carrying a clipboard. Why Euro Sienna? Honey, we Euro not putting laboratory language on bakery labels. People want warmth. Why Euro? Why Euro Yita? Euro S not laboratory language to say developed by. Why Euro? I said, though my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Paige clicked something on the laptop. Why Euro ta? Copy has to be clean. Investors like scalable nostalgia, remember? Why Euro? She said it like she was repeating a phrase from a wet seater on the stainless table by the mixer. I saw the tasting sheets from December 3rd spread beside a bag of pastry tips. They were my sheets, printed from my spreadsheet, with columns for bake time, yield, ingredient cost, and comments. Someone had circled Why Euro Aversion C. Best Texturia Euro in pink marker and written, Why Euro Family Favorite. Used for launch. Why Euro? I pointed at it. Why Euro? These are my cost sheets. Why Euro Maura? Set the clipboard down over the top of them. Why Euro Uthia? Euro Re, part of the family archive now. We all brought pieces of ourselves to this. Why Euro? I hated how reasonable she made it sound. There was no shouting, no slam door. Just my work being softened into a group story. One phrase at a time. At 6:12 p.m., a delivery driver from Barrage Restaurant Supply knocked on the glass. He had a dolly stacked with 2 50-pound bags of Kinga Euro S mill pastry flour and a box of parchment rounds. Paige signed the tablet without looking at the invoice. Why Euro? Actually, I placed that standing order. Why Euro? I said. The driver paused, thumb hovering over the screen. Why Euro? Name on account is S-Fail. I think billing changed last week though. Why Euro? Maura moved quickly. Why Euro? Jais. We updated everything for the company. Thank you. Why Euro? After he left, I opened the paper invoice taped to the flour. It still listed my old customer notes in the corner. Why Euro? Everyday delivery preferred. Call Sienna before substitutions. Why Euro? Under billing. It now said Vale Memorial Bakery LLC. Paige laughed softly. Why Euro? C. Even the flour knows it belongs here. Why Europe? I folded the invoice and held it against my apron. Why I paid the deposit on the first 3 orders from my own card. Why Euro? Mara Euro S. Mouth tightened. Why Euro Wand? We appreciated your volunteer spirit during a hard season. Why Euro Volunteer Spirit? She said it in the same tone people used at church when someone brought a casserole. I went quiet for a minute, then walked to the little office off the kitchen. The door was open. On the desk were launch programs in neat piles, each tied with beige twine. I untied one bundle and opened the top copy. The front page had Page A Euro S photo beside Grandma Euro S old rolling pin. Inside, under Why Euro, with gratitude. Why Euro, the names were sorted into categories. Investors, founding family, community, friends, family volunteers. My name sat under family volunteers, between cousin Tessa, who had arranged flowers, and Uncle Ray, who had hung 2 shelves. Sienna Vale, recipe memories, and early kitchen help. I read it twice, because the wording was so polished it almost slipped past me. Behind me, Paige said, IT as sweet, right? We wanted you included. Why Euro? I turned with the program still open in my hand. Why Euro, yeah included, where no one has to ask what I did. Why Euro? Mora stepped into the doorway. Why Euro, Dodo, not make this ugly. Sienna. The opening is Sunday. 112 people RSVP'd. Grandma Euro's friends are coming. Why Euro Wasker is coming too. Why Euro, I said. Mara Euro's eyes flicked to the program, then back to me. Why Euro Thun, he Euro LL. Enjoy seeing the recipes honored. Why Euro? I closed the program carefully so the crease lined up. My fingers left a faint flower print on Paige Euro's photo. At 6:41 p.m. I took a picture of the label stack, the tasting sheet under Mora Euro's clipboard, the beverage invoice, and the page with my name under family volunteers. I did not announce it. I just slipped my phone into my coat pocket and went back to the prep table. Paige was still choosing box colors. Why Euro cream? Why Euro, she said, turning the laptop toward Mora. Why Euro wore ivory? Mora looked at me before answering. Why Euro pivory? It photographs cleaner. Why Euro by Sunday morning? The storefront on Bellwether Street looked like a bakery that had been there for years, which was exactly what Mora wanted. I got there at 7:12 a.m. carrying the gray tote with my spare apron, a roll of Paintera Euro S tape, and the notebook I had not let out of my apartment since Friday. The front windows had been washed so clean they reflected the church steeple across the street. A pale ivory ribbon stretched between two brass stanchions at the door, and someone had tied tiny bunches of rosemary to each end with twine. Inside, the register counter had been cleared for Grandma Euro's framed photo. It was the one from her 76th birthday. Her hair pinned up badly because she had done it herself. Flower on the shoulder of her blue cardigan. In front of the frame was a small glass dish with lemon drops, the candy she used to keep in her purse. I noticed the photo mat had already been signed by 3 people in silver marker. Paige stood near the pastry case in a cream dress, holding her phone high while the sample trays were arranged behind her. Why Euro opening morning? Why Euro, she said into the camera, smiling toward the empty dining area. Why Euro Grandma Vale always believed food brought people home. Why Euro? I looked at the trays. Honey oat knots in tinge pieces. Plum cardamom slices cut to warm, the jam bleeding at the edges. Almond seed cookies lined on parchment with the exact spacing Oscar had taught me, so they wouldn't a Euro tea steam against each other. A man in a navy blazer stood by the espresso machine with Mora. He had a leather folder tucked under one arm and a visitor badge clipped to his lapel, handwritten in black Sharpie. Grant P., Harbor Community Capital. Beside him was a woman in a camel coat, Maribel Chow from the local paper. I recognized her because Grandma used to save her restaurant reviews. Mora waved me over with 2 fingers. Why Euro Sienna? Good. Can you check the back table? We need the tasting forks set out before guests come in. Grant smiled politely. Why Euro Jua Euro Rai, one of the granddaughters. Why Euro? Before I could answer, Mora said, why Euro wore quiet one. She helped us remember some of Moma's old kitchen habits. I set my tote down by the end of the counter. Why I tested the almond seed cookie and the plum loaf for the production menu. Why Euro Paige lowered her phone just enough to hear. Mora Euro's smile stayed in place. Why Euro GAF course. Why Euro Mora said. Why Euro everyone contributed in their own way. Maribola Euro's pen moved across a small Repertera Euro's notebook. Why Euro Wand, the bakery, is owned by the family company. Why Eurovale Memorial Bakery LLC. Why Euro Mara answered quickly. Why Euro PBI is our public lead. Ita Euro S. Been a beautiful collective effort. Collective? That word landed on the counter between the lemon drops and the receipt printer. At 7:31, a teenager from the print shop came in with a cardboard box of revised programs. The top copy had a soft ivory cover, not cream. Mara signed the delivery slip on a clipboard and handed it back without reading the total. Paige peeled one program open with her thumbnail. The front page had Grandma Euro's photo, the ribbon graphic, and the line, a family legacy lovingly revived. Why Euro inside was the schedule. 8 o'clock ribbon cutting. 8:10 blessing by Pastor Neil. 8:20 remarks from Mora Vale. 8:30 tasting service. The back page listed Why Euro a founding team. Why Euro Mora Vale, managing director. Paige Vale, Brand and guest experience. Drew Vale, operations support. Under a smaller heading near the bottom. Why Euro family volunteers. Why Euro my name sat between two cousins who had folded napkins once at Thanksgiving. Sienna Vale, recipe memories and early kitchen help. I closed the program and looked toward the sample trays. On the middle tray, a small tent card read, Why Euro Grandma, Euro S almond seed cookies, restored from family memory by Paige Vale. Why Euro, Paige saw me reading it. Why Euro, the wording is for guests. Why Euro, she said quietly, stepping closer. Why Euro, you know how people like a clean story. Why Euro, why I know how batches get built. Why Euro, I said. She glanced toward the front window, where the first guests had begun lining up outside. Coats pulled tight against the cold. Why Euro, please, Donna, Euro tea. Start before the ribbon. Aunt Mara has investors here. Why Euro? At 7:44, Oscar arrived through the side door in his brown wool cap, carrying a flat white box from his old shop. His eyes went to the sample trays first, then to the tent cards, then to me. Why Jew, all right, he asked. I picked up one of the ivory programs and folded it once, sharp enough to crease Grandma Euro's printed smile across the middle. Why Euro Gia Euro M? Going to keep one of these. Why Euro, I said. Oscar nodded. Slow and careful. Why Euro good? Keep it clean. Why Euro? I slid the program into my gray tote beside the notebook. Outside, Maribola, Euro's photographer, crouched near the ribbon to test his angle, and Mora stood in front of Grandma Euro's photo, practicing where to place her hand when she talked about legacy. At 7:58, Mora tapped the microphone twice, and the speaker on the black tripod gave a thin squeal. Someone from the coffee station laughed, then stopped when Mora lifted one hand. Why Euro, good morning everyone. If you can gather near the front windows, we're going to start right on time. Why Euro? The bakery smelled like orange peel, yeast, and the first batch of almond seed cookies cooling on the wire racks behind the counter. Paige stood beside the red ribbon in a cream blazer, her hair clipped back with one of Grandma Euro's old pearl barrettes. I knew it was Grandma Euro's because I had seen it in the blue bathroom cup on Arden Street for half my life. I stayed near the left wall, between the chalkboard menu and the shelf of boxed pastries. Oscar stood 2 feet behind me, arms folded, eyes on the crowd. My gray tote strap dug into my shoulder from the notebook inside. Mara began with the safe parts. Why, Euro P. Me mother, Elise Vale, believed a bakery was a neighborhood of Euro-S second kitchen. Why, Euro several people nodded. Grant P. from Harbor Community Capital stood in front, holding a paper cup with both hands. Maribel Chow had her phone recorder out, the small red light blinking. Mora gestured to Paige. Why Euro Juan today? My daughter has brought that spirit back with grace, patience, and a deep respect for the flavors our family grew up with. Why Euro? Paige smiled like she had practiced it in the window reflection. Then Mara looked toward my side of the room. Why Euro W also want to thank the relatives and friends who pitched in during the long months of preparation. Family volunteers washed dishes, sorted old cards, ran errands, and helped us remember what mattered. Why Euro? A few people turned toward me because the program had already trained them where to look. I felt their eyes find the volunteer line printed under my name. I stepped forward before I could talk myself out of it. My shoes made 2 sharp sounds on the tile. Why Euro Umora? Why Euro? I said, keeping my voice low enough that it did not Euro. T sound like I was stealing the microphone. I need you to correct the program before those go out with the press kits. Why Euro? Her smile tightened at the edges. Why Euro Sienna? We can talk after the ceremony. Why Euro? Why Euro Athea? Euro Re already out? Why Euro? I said. Why Euro Uthi list me as a volunteer? That isna Euro T accurate. Why Euro? A man near the pastry case lowered his program. Aunt Lydia looked at the ceiling. Paige turned slowly, still holding the ribbon scissors with both hands. Mora covered the microphone with her palm, although everyone nearby could still hear her. Why Euro Tethys is not the place. Why Euro Tethys is not the place when you printed it. Why Euro, I said. My voice shook on the last word, which annoyed me. I wanted clean. Oscar had said, keep it clean. I reached into my tote and touched the spiral edge of the notebook, just to remind myself it existed. Paige took 1 step toward the microphone. Why Euro you can I say something? Why Euro you can hesitated, then moved aside. Paige Euro's voice came out smooth, warm, almost apologetic. Why I know today is emotional for all of us. Grandma meant so much to Sienna. She meant so much to all of us. Why Euro? She glanced at the reporter, then back at me. Why Euro? You bet some people confuse grief with ownership. We all have memories. We all helped in different ways. This bakery is about honoring grandma, not turning every family recipe into a claim or a fight. Why euro? The word ownership landed harder because she said it softly. Someone in the back murmured, why euro athata, euro as fair. Why euro ikuda, euro tc who. Paige continued, why euro Sienna was around during recipe days. She cared. Nobody is taking that from her. But caring about Grandma Duzana, euro T mean you built the business. Why euro? I looked at the scissors in Page Euro's hand, silver blades tied with a red bow, and then at the cooling racks behind her. The almond seed cookies were spaced in rows of 12, the way Oscar had insisted after batch 7 spread into each other. Paige had hated that spacing because it slowed down tray loading. I said, why euro almond seed cookie on that tent card was tested in Oscara, Euro Aspac Kitchen on February 4th and February 6th. The sesame ratio changed after Oscar wrote Y euro to Oilia euro in the margin. Y euro, Paige Euro's face stayed composed, but her left thumb moved over the scissor handle. Maura leaned toward the microphone again. Y euro Sienna, please. U euro reproving Paige Euro's point. Y euro, no. Y euro, I said, quieter than before. Y euro, geo euro m. Correcting a document. Y euro. Maribel Chow shifted her recorder closer to her chest. The photographer lifted his camera but did not take a picture. Grant P. looked down at his program, then at the tent card beside the cookie samples. His mouth moved slightly as he read. Maura said, why euro Tithi's family has given you space to grieve. Do not punish Paige for doing something beautiful. Why euro? That was the sentence that told me she was not trying to calm me down. She was setting the room against me. I pulled the ivory program from my tote and held it by the corner. Not high, just enough that the front row could see the line. Why euro Pimi name is printed here under family volunteers. Why euro, I said. Why euro O before the ribbon is cut. IA euro M, asking you to stop handing these out. Paige gave a small laugh into the microphone, the kind people use when they want the room to relax with them. Why euro Sienna? We have 112 guests and a ribbon outside. This isna euro TA courtroom. Why euro? Oscar spoke from behind me. Why euro thon dona euro T? Make false credits. Why euro? His voice was rough, and several heads turned because he was not family, which made him harder to dismiss. Maura Euro's eyes narrowed for half a second before she found her host's face again. Why euro Wasker? We appreciate your support, truly, but this is a family matter. Why euro? He nodded once. Why euro Recipipes Arena euro T, corrected by family titles. Why euro? The front door opened, bringing in cold air and the sound of a delivery truck backing up somewhere on Bellwether Street. The red ribbon outside flicked against the glass. Maura looked at the crowd, then at Paige. Why euro JOY? Euro re going to proceed. Why euro? Paige lifted the scissors. Why euro Ufer grandma? Why euro? People clapped because most people clap when they are told what moment they are standing in. I stepped back to the wall with the program still in my hand. My cheeks were hot, and I hated that Paige had managed to make proof sound like jealousy before I had shown a single page. But Grant P. had stopped clapping. He was reading the program again, slower this time. Grant P. was still looking down at the ivory program when Aunt Maura touched my elbow with 2 fingers. Why euro Sienna? Come with me for a second. Why euro, she said, smiling toward the guests as if she were guiding me to a better photo angle. I didn't euro T move at first. Oscar was still beside the cookie table, his hands flat on the linen cloth near the tray cards. Paige had turned toward the ribbon, lifting her phone again, pretending the moment had already passed. Maura Euro's fingers tightened just enough for me to feel the warning. Why euro no, why euro, she said softly. She led me away from the almond seed cookies, past the wall where Grandma Euro's framed black and white bakery photo hung above a basket of branded napkins. The investor table was set up near the front window, half hidden behind a fern and a tall chalkboard that said Elise Vale Memorial Bakery, opening day in Paige Euro's looping handwriting. There were 3 folders on that table, navy blue, silver clip on each one. A stack of business cards sat beside a small plate of lemon bars. I saw Grant P.Y.S. card on top, Grant Palmer Community Foods, with an office address in Lake Bridge. Leah Mercer stood near the table with a paper cup of coffee in one hand. She was wearing a gray blazer and had a clipboard tucked under her arm. She saw Maura bring me over, and her eyes moved from Maura Euro's hand on my elbow to my tote bag. Why euro Umora? Y euro, Leah said. Y euro list, this something for later. Y euro Yida. Euro S 2 minutes. Y euro Mora answered. Y euro W need to tidy up a loose end before Grant asks the wrong question. Y euro, that was the first time I heard someone say it plainly. Mara opened the top navy folder and pulled out 2 pages. The paper had a header with the bakery logo, Grandma Euro S rolling pin drawing turned into a neat little brand mark. Under it, in bold type, it read, Volunteer Contribution, Acknowledgement and Release. My name was already typed on the first line. Sienna Marie Vale. Mora placed a black pen on top of the signature line and lowered her voice. Y euro TSD just says you helped his family. Y euro, she said. Y euro, which you did. Y euro. I stared at the document instead of her face. The second paragraph said I acknowledged that all recipes, testing notes, photographs, spreadsheets, vendor contacts, menu descriptions, and related materials created for the bakery were donated without expectation of wages, ownership, reimbursement, or future claim. The date at the bottom was that day. June 14, my left hand went to the strap of my tote. I could feel the corner of Grandma Euro's notebook through the canvas. Why euro, why does it say spreadsheets? Why euro, I asked. Mara let out a small breath through her nose. Why euro Pobek? 'Cause you made cost sheets. Ita euro S, normal language. Leah set her coffee down on a napkin. Why euro Sienna? Have you had a chance to review that before now? Why euro? Mora turned her head quickly. Why euro Glia? Please. Ita euro S. Not a negotiation. Ita euro S, a family acknowledgement. Why euro? Why a release is a legal document. Why euro, Leah said. Paige appeared beside the fern, still wearing Grandma Euro S pearl barrette. Why euro moom? The ribbon is waiting. Why euro H then help me. Why euro Mora snapped. Still quiet enough that the nearest guests only heard a clipped murmur. Paige looked at me. Her smile had lost its camera shape. Why euro Sienna? Just sign it. Nobody is saying you didn't a euro T help. Why euro? Why euro, the paper says. I donated everything. Why euro, I said. Why euro Pabekas? You did it for Grandma. Why euro, Paige replied. Why euro Athata? Euro S, what all of us did. Why euro? I looked past her to the front counter. The staff had paused with the pastry boxes half folded. One of the high school girls, Tessa, held a roll of bakery stickers and watched without knowing where to look. Mora slid the pen closer. Why euro W have people here who need to know their Wona euro TB family disputes. You already made a scene with the program. Dona euro T make Grandma euro S, opening about money. Why euro? Why IT isna euro T just money. Why euro, I said, though my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Mora leaned in, her perfume, orange blossom and powder, mixed with the warm butter smell from the ovens. Why Europit is exactly money once you start talking about receipts in front of investors. Why euro, she said. Why euro GR22? You do not want your name attached to bitterness before you even know what you euro redoing with your life. Why euro? Leah picked up the release and scanned it. Why euro Umora, who drafted this? Why euro war online service? Why euro Mora said. Why euro Yida, euro S standard? Why euro? Why IT includes intellectual property language? Why euro, Leah said. Why euro wand reimbursement waiver language? Why euro Mara, euro S jaw shifted. Why euro Athata, euro S why it protects everyone. Why euro? I reached into my tote and touched the spiral edge of my cost binder. Inside were the flour invoices from March, the used sheeter deposit receipt, the email printout from the landlord a euro S office, and the torn half-sheet Grandma had written on before she died, partnership, if Sienna still wants it. I had carried that note for months and still let people call me helpful because helpful sounded safer than asking for a place at the table. Grant P. stepped closer from the program display, holding his copy open. Why'd you, Mrs. Vale? Why? He said, not loud. Why IHI would prefer no one sign anything under pressure at my table. Why? Mora Euro S smile returned, thin and practiced. Why Euro Grant? This is family housekeeping. Why Euro? He looked at the release in Leah Euro S hand. Why Euro Pit looks like ownership housekeeping. Why Euro? Paige muttered. Why Euro Tease is ridiculous. Why euro? I took the black pen off the page, capped it, and set it beside the lemon bars. Why euro Gia euro M not signing that? Why euro, I said. Mora, euro S eyes stayed on the pen for 1 second too long. Then the front door chimed, and 2 more guests walked in, right into the space where the ribbon cutting was supposed to happen. The 2 guests were not guests. Leah Mercer stepped in first, holding a navy accordion folder against her hip and a phone in her other hand. Behind her was a man from the landlord Euro's office, Mr. Dorsey, the one who always wore a tan raincoat even when the weather was clear. He carried a clipboard with a yellow legal pad clipped to the front. Leah looked from the ribbon by the door to the unsigned release on the investor table. Why Euro Gia, Euro M. Sorry, why Euro, she said, keeping her voice polite enough for the guests near the pastry case. Why Euro Pam, I early. Why Euro? Maura recovered fast. She slid the release toward a stack of napkins like it was a menu someone had abandoned. Why Euro Glia High? No, we were just handling a few family things before the ribbon. Why Euro Mara said. Why Euro Thali signatures can wait 5 minutes. Why Euro? Mr. Dorsey checked his watch. Why Euro Yida? Euro S 1042. Building access terms were set for 10:45 before the public ceremony. Why Euro? Paige leaned close to Mara and whispered, why Euro? Why is he saying that out loud? Why Euro? Because he was a lease witness, I thought. Because some people still treated papers like they meant something. Leah set her accordion folder on the end of the table, beside the lemon bars and the capped black pen. She opened the top flap and pulled out a lease packet with blue tabs along the side. I saw the printed address on the first page, 48 Bellwether Street, Unit B, and under it the tenant name, Vale Memorial Bakery, LLC. Maura reached for the packet. Why Euro W can sign in the office. Why Euro? Why Euro? Other Isna, Euro T in office yet. Why Euro? Leah said. Why Euro Etheria? Euro S, a storage alcove with a mop sink. Why Euro? A woman near the drink station coughed into her cup. Page A Euro S smile tightened. Grant Palmer came back from the window display, where he had been pretending to study the seated rye. Why G Ms. Mercer? Why he said. Why Juari the attorney who witnessed the lease letter? Why I witnessed the letter of intent. Why Euro? Leah said. Why Euro Wand? I received the final lease for signature this morning. Why Euro? Maura Euro S fingertips tapped twice on the table. Why Euro Grant? This is really routine. Why Euro? Leah looked at me then. Directly. Like she was checking whether I wanted the floor or a way out of it. I did not feel brave. I felt 22, with flour under one fingernail and my name printed as a volunteer in a glossy program. But I had the tote at my feet, and inside it was Grandma Euro's old envelope with the soft torn corner. I bent down and pulled out the folded landlord email first. It had coffee stains on the bottom from my apartment table. Then I pulled out the sheeter deposit receipt and the flour invoices with my debit card Euro S last 4 digits circled in blue. Last, I touched the envelope with the partnership note, but I did not open it yet. Paige saw it and said, why Euro pair? We seriously doing a scrapbook presentation? Why Euro? Oscar had been quiet by the prep doorway, one hand resting on the stainless rack. He stepped forward with his paper cup of coffee. Why Euro Yif? You used her formulas. Paige, it isna. Euro T, a scrapbook. Why Euro? Morris said. Why Euro Wasker, please? This is family. Why Euro? Oh, why Euro? No. Why Euro? He said. Why Euro Thesis is a bakery. Why Euro? All that landed harder than any speech could have. A bakery meant weights, invoices, oven repairs, deposits, schedules, and the person who showed up when the starter smelled wrong at 4:30 in the morning. Leah took a pair of reading glasses from her blazer pocket. Why Euro Sienna? Before anyone signs anything, is there a document you want reviewed? Why Euro? I held the envelope between both hands. Grandma had written my name on the front in her slanted blue pen. Sienna, recipes and shop notes. April. I had avoided that envelope for weeks after she died because opening it felt like admitting she was not coming back to correct my math in the margins. Mara, Euro S voice sharpened. Why Euro at that note is personal. It has nothing to do with investors. Why Euro? Grant said, if it concerns ownership or recipe development. It does. Why Euro? I looked at the phone. Camera Tessa was still holding near the register, then at the people by the ribbon, then back at the envelope. So before I read what Grandma wrote, comment why Euro a recipia. Euro, if you think family memories stop being harmless the moment someone uses them to erase the worker who built the menu. Keep watching because Grandma Euro's note named the part of the business my aunt kept calling volunteer work. Then I slid my thumb under the flap. The flap tore crooked because the glue had gone brittle. Inside was one sheet of Grandma Euro S blue stationery, folded around 2 smaller pieces of paper. I recognized her handwriting before I made out the words. The slanted G on Y euro grandma euro and the way she wrote my name with a long tail under the last A. Leah said quietly, Y euro. Reread it into the record if you euro re comfortable. Y euro. I wasna euro T comfortable. My fingers had flour paste dried along the cuticles, and Paget Euro's phone light was still pointed at my hands from across the counter. But I unfolded the page and read the first lines. Y euro Sienna? If your aunt gets serious about the bakery idea after I am gone, do not let them treat testing as helping. Helping is bringing chairs. Testing is work. Y euro Mora made a sharp sound through her nose. Y euro mother wrote notes like that all the time. She worried. Y euro? I kept reading. Slower because the next sentence was underlined twice. Y euro the lemon braid is yours with my glaze. The rye rolls are ours. Yours and mine after the third salt trial. Keep the cost pages. They will ask you to be sweet before they ask you to be paid. Y euro? Oscar put one hand on the edge of the stainless table. His knuckles were red from washing sheet pans, and he nodded once like he had been waiting for somebody else to say that sentence out loud. One of the smaller papers slipped loose and landed face up beside the register. It was a torn half sheet from Grandma Euro's old order pad. Across the top she had written, Y Euro Partnership Discussion. Sienna, Oscar present. 3/14 menu development and credit. Y Euro under it were 3 bullet points in pencil. Leah leaned in without touching it. Y Euro May, I photographed that. Y Euro, I nodded. Y Euro, please. Y Euro. She took 2 photos. One straight down and one angled, so the register clock showed 10:51 in the corner. Then she said, Y euro Sienna, show me the notebooks you mentioned. Y euro. I went to the alcove. The mop sink smelled like bleach and wet cardboard. Behind the extra aprons, my canvas tote was still sitting where I had shoved it that morning after Maura told me the front counter was for family photos. I pulled out 3 spiral notebooks, 2 legal pads, and the red folder with the receipts. The first notebook had a coffee ring on the cover and Y Euro O Memorial Menu, January Euro written in black marker. I opened to the lemon braid page. There were 6 columns: date, batch size, butter, temperature, proof time, glaze, ratio, notes. My initials, SV, were at the bottom of each test. Oscara Euro S initials were beside 3 of them, OL, with comments like Y Euro Tatita Euro and Y Euro Good Crumb, Reduce Peel. Y Euro, Grant. Took the notebook from Leah, Euro S offered hand, and looked at it without turning pages too fast. Y Euro TVs is recipe development documentation. Y Euro page said, a lot of people write in notebooks. Y Euro, I flipped to the next tab. Y Euro Theus is the almond crescent yield sheet. This is the waste log from February 8th. This is the cost sheet for the rye rolls. Because your sponsored post said they were Grandma Euro S untouched village recipe. But we changed the flour blend after the first 12 trays came out dense. Y Euro? Page A Euro S mouth tightened. Y Euro S the caption was marketing. Y Euro S the invoice was na Euro T. Y Euro, I said. I opened the red folder and placed the receipts in a row on the prep table. The used dough sheeter deposit. $900 paid from my checking account on February 2nd. The half payment on the Hobart mixer repair. $312.48. Card ending in 7,719. The almond flour order from North Pier Supply. Billed to me, delivered to 48 Bellwether Street. Unit B, each receipt had either my name, my initials, or my email printed at the top. Mr. Dorsey adjusted his glasses. Y Euro those deliveries matched the access log. I signed for 2 of them because no one from the LLC was here yet. Y Euro. Leah looked up. Y Euro, do you have the lease witness email too? Y Euro. I took my phone from my apron pocket and opened the saved PDF. My thumb shook once, so I steadied it against the table. Y Euro, March 23rd. Subject line. Y Euro, access before lease execution. Y Euro, Maura forwarded it to me and wrote, Y Euro, use side door. Keep receipts. Y Euro, LL sort shares after opening. Y Euro, Y Euro. Grant repeated the last part. Y Euro, JOY, Euro, LL sort shares after opening. Y Euro, Maura. Stepped closer, lowering her voice like that could shrink the problem. Y Euro at that was casual family language. You know how people talk when they are re-grieving and busy? Y Euro, Leah. Set her phone down beside the partnership note. Y Euro Tathon, Y asked her to sign a volunteer release today. Y Euro, for the first time since the ribbon had been pinned across the doorway. Maura did not answer right away. She looked past me toward the front windows, where guests were pretending to study the pastry case while listening to every word. Paige stepped away from the pastry case with her phone still in her hand, the pink case catching the light from the front windows. Why Euro you can. We stop pretending this is some corporate theft thing. Why Euro, she said, and she kept her voice soft enough for guests, loud enough for the investors near the coffee urn. Why Euro these were Grandma Valea's recipes. Family recipes. We all grew up eating them. Sienna helped because we all helped. Why Euro? A few people nodded because that sounded easy. Family recipes fit on a chalkboard. Recipe testing did not. Paige turned toward the display shelf where the first batch of lemon braids sat under a glass dome. Why Euro the lemon braid was Grandma Euro S. The rye rolls were Grandma Euro S. The almond nuts were Grandma Euro S. We Euro re-honoring her. Why Euro? I looked at the braid under the dome. Each strip was cut exactly 1¼ inches wide because Oscar had timed the bake on wider strips and they tore at the seam. The glaze had a pinch of citric acid because lemon juice alone broke on the second day. Grandma Euro's handwritten card had said lemon loaf, not braid. I knew all of that, but my mouth still lagged behind my memory. Oscar moved first. He lifted his canvas bag from the chair by the wall and set it on the nearest Kaffa copyright table. It landed with a worn, flour-dusted thud. Why Euro PPIs? You ate the home version. Sienna built the production version. Why Euro? Paige gave a tight laugh. Why Euro Oscar? With respect, you helped too. Why Euro? Why I did. Why Euro, he said. Why Euro? That is why I kept copies. Why Euro? He pulled out a blue spiral notebook with a rubber band around it and a folded stack of parchment sheets. Leah stepped closer, and Mr. Dorsey came around the side of the counter with his clipboard tucked under his arm. Oscar opened the notebook to a page marked with a coffee stain at the top. Why Euro April 2nd? Why Euro, he read. Why Euro Uleman braid? Batch size 12. Dough too wet at 72% hydration. Sienna suggests 68 with overnight rest. My note says, why Euro good structure, less tearing. Why Euro April 5th? Batch size 24. Sienna changes glaze ratio for holding case. April 9th, she calculates cost per braid at $3.16 before packaging. Why Euro? He slid the notebook toward Leah and tapped the margin with one square fingernail. There were my initials beside his on every trial. Paige Euro's face stayed camera ready, but she stopped recording. Her thumb pressed the side button, and the screen went black. Why Euro a thought still doesn't Euro T mean ownership. Why Euro, she said. Why Euro? People adapt recipes all the time in families. Why Euro? Oscar nodded once, as if she had asked a fair question. Why Euro? Ownership is for Leah to explain. IA Euro M talking about development. If you serve Grandma Euro's Sunday loaf to 8 relatives, that is one thing. If you sell 200 braids by 10 in the morning and promise consistency to investors, someone had to make the recipe survive a mixer, a sheeter, a proof box, a refrigerated case, and a second-day sale. Why Euro? He reached back into the bag and brought out 3 printed photos. He laid them in a row on the Kaffa copyright table. In the first, I was standing beside the old Hobart mixer at 5:41 a.m., hairnet crooked, writing on a clipboard. In the second, Oscar was holding a tray of collapsed rye rolls, both of us laughing like we were too tired to be embarrassed. In the third, my hand was pointing at a thermometer in a proofing cabinet. Why Euro? These are from my shop camera. Why Euro? Oscar said. Why Euro? O back room, Lynn Bakery, before it closed. March 20th, March 23rd, March 27th. Sienna asked permission to use the space. She paid for ingredients. I donated the bench time because her grandmother had been kind to me when my wife was sick. Why Euro? At that, Aunt Maura finally moved. Why Euro, Oscar? Why Euro, she said, smoothing the front of her cream blazer. Why Euro? Theus's private family grief, being dragged in front of guests. Why Euro? He looked at her for a long second. Why Euro? No. Private family grief was when she brought me the recipe cards in a grocery bag and cried over the first ruined dough. This is a bakery opening with a lease, investors, and a release form. Why Euro? One of the men by the coffee urn, the one with the navy tie and silver watch, picked up his program and checked the inside page. I watched his eyes move to the line that said Family Volunteers, Sienna Vale. He did not say anything, but he folded the program once and held it at his side. Paige saw him do it. Why Euro? The branding is about Grandma. Why Euro? She said quickly. Why Euro? W can update a credit line. Sienna can be featured. IA Euro. I'm sure mom never meant to erase anybody. Y Euro. Leah picked up the volunteer release from the table. The paper had a crease through my printed name where Mora had folded it into her purse. Y Euro. Theus does more than erase a credit line. Y Euro. Leah said. Y Euro. Pitt asks Sienna to confirm she had no compensation claim, no partnership expectation, and no intellectual contribution requiring permission. Y Euro. The word intellectual sounded strange in the bakery, floating above the trays and tongs and jam fingerprints. I would never have used it for what I did at 4 a.m. with flour under my nails. But Leah put the legal word on the thing my family had been calling help. Mora reached for the paper. Y Euro. Athata was a standard precaution. Y Euro. Leah did not let go. Y Euro. A standard for whom? Y Euro. The front door opened, and 2 more guests stepped in holding a wrapped orchid and a card. They paused when they saw everyone clustered around the Kaffa copyright table instead of the ribbon. Paige turned toward them with a practiced smile that only reached halfway. Y Euro. Joy. Euro. Reed just handling a small paperwork issue. Y Euro. Oscar closed his notebook, leaving his palm on top of the cover. Y Euro. Thon handle it honestly. Y Euro. The man who had come in with the 2 late guests set his leather folder on the nearest Kaffa copyright table. He was in a gray sport coat, no tie, with a visitor badge clipped crookedly to his pocket. I recognized him from the investor breakfast Mora had hosted 3 weeks earlier. Mr. Harlan, from Harlan Community Foods. He looked at Mora first, then at the launch program lying open beside the ribbon scissors. Y Euro. Mora. Y Euro, he said, keeping his voice low enough that the guests by the pastry case had to lean in to hear him. Is the ownership packet you sent us false? Y Euro. Mora Euro S. Hand moved to the pearls at her collar. Y Euro. Pabsolutely not. Y Euro. Pabsolute nix. Y Euro. Keithon explained this. Y Euro. He opened his folder and pulled out a stapled document with a blue cover sheet. Y Euro. Jar packet says all recipes, trade names, and production processes were contributed by Vale family members as memorial assets, with no outside claims or pending disputes. Y Euro. He tapped the second page with 1 finger. I saw the phrase even from where I stood. Contributed without compensation. Paige shifted behind the Kaffa copyright table. Y Euro. Sienna is family. Y Euro. Mr. Harlan turned his head toward her. Y Euro. That is not an answer to a warranty. Y Euro. Aunt Mora gave a small laugh, the kind she used when someone had knocked over a water glass at Thanksgiving. Y Euro. This is being made larger than it needs to be. Sienna helped. Yes, everyone helped. Paige did tastings. My brother painted trim. My sister handled florals. That is what families do after a loss. Y Euro. Leah Mercer, who had been quiet near the wall with her black tote at her feet, stepped forward. Y Euro. Ooted your packet disclosed Sienna Valea Euro S recipe development notebooks. Y Euro. Mora Euro S mouth tightened. Y Euro. Glia Idona Euro T. Think this is the place. Y Euro. Leah did not raise her voice. Y Euro. Ooted it disclosed them. Why? Mr. Harlan looked at Leah. Y Euro. Jua Euro Recouncil. Y Euro. Y Euro. Small business attorney. I witnessed the lease meeting on April 2. Y Euro. She pulled a folded email printout from her tote, the crease worn soft from being handled. Y Euro. Wand. I advised Ms. Vale that any business relying on her formulations should have a written agreement before opening. Y Euro. The word formulations landed harder than recipes. It sounded like work done under fluorescent lights with a scale and a timer, not a spoon passed around a kitchen. Mora held out her hand. Y Euro. Meme, I see that. Y Euro. Leia did not give it to her. She held it up so Mr. Harlan could read the header. From Leah Mercer to Mora Vale, Paige Vale, Sienna Vale, date, April 3rd, 8:14 a.m. Subject, Memorial Bakery lease and recipe contribution concerns. Mr. Harlan took out his phone and photographed the page. Mora Euro S eyes followed the phone. Y Euro. ASAT email was preliminary. Y Euro. YET says. Y Euro. Leah continued. Y Euro. ASAT. No lease should be finalized using Sienna Euro S production recipes unless her role was defined as partner, paid developer, or licensed contributor. Y Euro. A guest near the register whispered. Y Euro. Licensed. Y Euro. Licensed. Y Euro. Paige reached for the launch program and closed it, covering the page that listed me under family volunteers. Y Euro. You can. We stopped performing this in front of everyone. Y Euro. I almost said yes. My instinct was still to make the room easier for other people. Then I looked down at the volunteer release on the table, at the blank line where Mora had expected my signature. The pen she had offered me was still uncapped, leaving a tiny black dot on the paper. Mr. Harlan slid his own packet toward Leah. Y Euro HTS is what we received. Y Euro HTS. Leah put on reading glasses and scanned the first pages. I watched her finger pause at the certification section. Y Euro Umora. This says you are the authorized representative for Vale Heritage Bakery LLC. Y Euro Athada Euro S Standard. Y Euro Mora said. YIT also says there are no oral or written side agreements concerning ownership, recipes, equipment, or reimbursement. Y Euro Oscar made a small sound through his nose. Y Euro equipment. Y Euro. I opened my canvas bag with fingers that were not as steady as I wanted. The zipper caught on the corner of Grandma's old notebook, and for one stupid second, I worried about tearing the fabric. Then I pulled out the envelope marked mixer, oven, sheeter in my own block letters. Why I paid deposits. Why Euro, I said. My voice came out thin, so I tried again. Why I paid deposits on equipment after Mora told me we were all building toward opening. Why Euro? Mora shook her head quickly. Why Euro? Those were family contributions. Why Euro? Why Euro? No. Why Euro? I said, and took out the first receipt. Why Euro? This one is from North County Restaurant Supply. March 29th, $1,200 on my debit card for the used spiral mixer deposit. The invoice lists Vale Memorial Bakery. Attention Sienna Vale. Why Euro? Mr. Harlan reached for it. Why Euro May? I handed it to him. The paper had been folded twice, and the carbon copy ink had smudged near the bottom. He read the last 4 digits of my card out loud, then stopped himself and looked at me. Why Euro? Sorry. Why Euro? Why Euro Yida Euro S? Okay. Why Euro? I said. Why Euro Pit is not okay, Leah said, still reading the investor packet. Page folded her arms. Why Euro? Nobody asked you to buy anything. Why Euro? Oscar looked at her over his glasses. Why I was there when your mother called the supply shop from my office. Why Euro Mora? Mora Euro S face changed then. Not dramatically. Just enough. Her eyes went from Leah to Oscar to Mr. Harlana's phone, measuring who had what and where it might go. Mr. Harlan closed the blue packet and held it flat against his folder. Why Euro W need to pause the opening. Why Euro Page A Euro S head snapped toward him. Why Euro to the ribbon cutting is scheduled for 10:30. Why Euro? He checked his watch. Why Euro Yida Euro S 10:22. Then you have 8 minutes to decide whether you want to cut a ribbon under a packet. I now have reason to believe is inaccurate. Why Euro? A woman holding a tray of sample cards slowly set them back on the counter. Mora took one step toward me, her voice softened for the guests. Why Euro Sienna? If you wanted credit, we could have discussed wording. Why Euro? I picked up the launch program and opened it to the volunteer page. My name sat between Uncle Rob, who had hung shelves, and Lily, age 12, who had tied favor bags. Why Euro? This is not wording. Why Euro? I said. Why Euro? This is a record you gave to 112 people. Why Euro? Mara reached for the program, but I kept my fingers on the fold. Behind her, the kitchen timer above the convection oven blinked 9:52 a.m. Page A, Euro S trays of lemon knots sat on the speed rack with paper flags stuck into the top pan for the photographer. The icing bags were lined up in a hotel pan, tips wrapped in damp towels the way Oscar had taught me, because crusted icing ruins the first 3 cookies and makes the photos look careless. Mara looked at the timer, then at the closed swinging door to the front room. Why Euro W have guests waiting? Why Euro? She said, low enough that the servers near the dish sink pretended not to hear. Why Euro jar? Grandmother A Euro S friends are out there in church shoes. The mayor is out there. You are ruining Grandma Euro's day over paperwork. Why Euro? Who Paige stood by the walk-in with her phone in one hand and the ribbon scissors in the other. She was still wearing the flour-dusted apron embroidered with Vale Family Bakery, even though she had changed into clean white sneakers for pictures. Why Euro Yida Euro S the opening. Why Euro? Paige said. Why Euro? You can. We not do this beside the mop bucket. Euro Oscar, who had come in after Mr. Harlan, set his paper cup of coffee on the stainless prep table. Why Euro? The mop bucket is where half of real bakery business happens. Why Euro? He said. Why Euro? I might as well. Why Euro? Mora shot him a look, then turned back to me. Why Euro? Sienna? You helped because you loved your grandmother. Why Euro? She said. Why Euro? Everyone knows that. Why are you making it sound transactional? Why Euro? That word landed harder than bitter had, because it was tidier. It made me picture a cash register where there had been a mixing bowl, a price tag on Grandma Euro's handwriting. For months, that fear had kept me quiet. I opened my tote bag and pulled out the blue notebook with the cracked spine. The cover had a smear of cocoa near the bottom corner and a label I had written in black marker. Veil bases, costs, tests, Jan to April. Why I did help because I loved her. Why euro, I said. My voice caught on the first try, so I made myself look at the page instead of Mora. Why euro wand? I was afraid if I asked to be paid or named, everyone would say I was putting a price on grief. Why euro? No one moved for a second. The hood fan kept humming over the fry station. Somewhere beyond the swinging door, a child laughed and a woman asked if the lavender shortbread had nuts. I turned the notebook so the others could see the page dated February 18th. Why euro teeth is the third test for the orange cardamom braid. 6 pounds flour, 4% butter increase. Proof time changed from 45 minutes to 62 because the first 2 batches tore at the seam. Why euro? Oscar leaned forward and tapped the margin with one finger. Why euro, a thought. Was the Tuesday the pilot light went out? Why euro, he said. Why euro W finished the batch at my shop on Mill Street. I wrote the oven temp on a receipt because her pen died. Why euro? He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a folded thermal receipt, yellowed at the edge. Why euro hair? Why euro? Leah took it before Mora could say anything. She unfolded it carefully and read the top. Why euro Lynn Bakery? February 18th, 7:41 p.m. Notes on back. Why euro? She flipped it over. Why euro 350 convection? Rotate at 14 minutes. Sienna euro S braid test. Page A euro S thumb had stopped moving on her phone. Mara pressed her lips together and picked up the clipboard from the end of the prep table. I recognized the top page before she turned it around. Volunteer, contribution and release, with my name typed into the first blank line. Why euro Jew were going to ask me to sign that today. Why euro, I said. Why I was going to ask you to clean up confusion. Why euro Mara said. Why euro Linvestors dona euro T like family disputes. This release says you contributed in memory of your grandmother, which is true. Why euro? Why euro pit? Also says I waive compensation, reimbursement, authorship, recipe claims, equipment claims, and any informal partnership understanding. Why euro? I said. Why euro a thought apart is not a sympathy card. Why euro? Mr. Harlan stepped closer to Leah. Why euro Jubblewist that included in the packet? Why euro? Leah did not answer him right away. She looked at Mora. Why euro Jubblewist this release prepared before or after my April 3rd email? Why euro? Mora euro S grip tightened on the clipboard clip. Why euro Leah? This is a family matter. Why euro? Why euro? No. Why euro? Leah said. Why euro pit became a business matter when you put it in an investor packet and invited the press. Why euro? The kitchen door opened 6 inches, and Uncle Rob stuck his head in. Why euro Ruthia, euro are you, re-asking when to gather for the ribbon. Why euro? Mora did not look away from me. Why euro? Tell them 2 minutes. Why euro? Uncle Rob hesitated. Why euro? Umora. Why euro? YTWO minutes. Why euro? She repeated. He let the door swing shut. I placed the blue notebook beside the launch program, then put Oscar's receipt on top so the date showed. I was shaking now, but my hands still knew how to arrange proof in a straight line. Why euro Gia euro M? Not asking you to cancel grandma. Why euro? I said. Why euro Gia euro M? Asking you to stop using her name to erase mine. Why euro? Mara stared at the line of papers on the prep table as if one of them might move if she waited long enough. Uncle Rob came back through the swinging door at 6:41 p.m. with his phone pressed to his chest. The noise from the front room leaked in behind him. Chairs scraping, a child asking for a second mini G copyright Claire, someone laughing too loudly near the pastry case. Why euro Umora? Why euro, he said, keeping his voice low. Why euro Pivon from Harbor Table is asking whether the ribbon is happening before 7. The photographer has another event. Why euro? Paige reached for the launch program like she could put it back in place and fix the night. Leah gently put 2 fingers on the corner of it. Why euro Olive that there? Why euro? Leah said. Paige A euro S mouth tightened. Why euro Yida euro SA program? Why euro pit is a representation made to guests, press, and potential investors. Why euro? Leah said. Why euro Wandit? Identifies Sienna as a volunteer, while there are documents on this table suggesting contributions that may not be volunteer work. Why euro? Mora finally looked at Leah. Why euro W consort family wording later? Tonight is an opening. The lease is ready. The landlord is expecting signatures. Y Euro. Leah took a thin folder from her tote, the gray one with a Mercer legal label on the tab. She opened it and pulled out a printed email chain. I recognized the top line before she turned it around. From Leah Mercer to Maura Vale, Rob Vale, subject lease, signing witness requirements and ownership disclosures. Leah tapped the second paragraph with a capped pen. Y Euro 1 May 9th. I wrote that any person claiming recipe ownership, equipment reimbursement, or partnership participation needed to be disclosed before signing, because the lease contains a business use warranty. Rob replied that the bakery would be operated by Maura Vale and Paige Vale, with family volunteers only. Y Euro. Uncle Rob rubbed the back of his neck. Y Euro Athada, Euro S. What I was told. Y Euro. Maura said. Y Euro Athada, Euro S. What it was. Y Euro. Oscar made a small sound beside me, not quite a cough. He had stepped back from the table, but he was still holding his receipt envelope like he Euro D been asked to keep the building upright. Leah slid another page from the folder. Y Euro. That landlorda Euro S agent sent the final lease at 3:12 this afternoon. It has not been signed yet. I am advising that it not be signed tonight. Y Euro. O. Page turned toward the front room. Y Euro. Jucana Euro T. Just pause a whole opening. There are people here. Y Euro. Why, I can pause my participation in a signing. Y Euro. Leah said. Y Euro. Wand. I can tell the landlord a Euro S agent there is an unresolved ownership and contribution issue. If you sign after that without review, you are doing it with notice. Y Euro. The word notice landed harder than yelling would have. Maura lowered her voice. Y Euro. Glia. Think about the optics. Y Euro. Why I am. Y Euro. Leah said. Why a ribbon cutting in front of 112 guests while a disputed volunteer release sits unsigned in the kitchen is an optic. Y Euro. I looked at the release again. My name was typed cleanly at the bottom. Sienna Vale, contributor and volunteer. There was a blank signature line under it, waiting like I was late for my own erasure. Uncle Rob took his phone out and typed with both thumbs. Y Euro. Gia Euro LL. Tell Evan 5 minutes. Y Euro. Y Euro. No. Y Euro. Leah said. Y Euro. Tell him the ribbon cutting is postponed, pending a lease and ownership review. Use those words. Page A Euro S eyes flashed at me. Y Euro. So this is what you wanted. To shut it down. I didn't Euro T answer right away. A tray of Grandma Euro S almond crescents sat on the speed rack behind her, dusted unevenly with powdered sugar. I had made the test batch at 4 that morning because Paige wanted the case full for photos. My fingerprints were probably still in the dough where I had pinched the ends. Why I wanted my name off the volunteer line? Y Euro, I said. Y Euro. Wand. I wanted nobody signing a lease on work they hadn't a Euro T accounted for. Maura pressed her palm flat to the table. Y Euro. This is grief turning ugly. Y Euro. Leah Euro S pen stopped moving. Y Euro. No. This is documentation arriving before signatures. That is exactly when it is supposed to arrive. Y Euro. For the first time that night, I felt the shape of the room change around a practical fact. The ovens were still humming. The guests were still eating. The gold ribbon was still taped across the front doorway. But the business part, the part Maura had tried to slide through under frosting and framed photos, had been made to wait. Rob opened the kitchen door just enough to speak through the gap. Y Euro. Peven. Y Euro. He called. Y Euro. We re-postponing the ribbon cutting. Lease and ownership review. Yes, I know. I Euro LL. Come explain. Y Euro. A groan rose from the front room, confused and scattered. Paige covered her face with one hand, then lowered it quickly when she remembered there might be cameras. Leah gathered the release, the program, the May 9th email, Oscara Euro S February receipt, and my blue notebook into 2 neat stacks. Y Euro. Sienna. Y Euro, she said. Y Euro. Dodo, you have the equipment receipts with you. Y Euro. Y Euro. Pin my car. Y Euro, I said. Y Euro. Glove compartment. Pink envelope. Y Euro. Y Geo. Get them. Y Euro, she said. Y Euro. Dodo, not hand them to anyone except me. Y Euro. Maura gave a short laugh. Y Euro. No, we retreating family like opposing counsel. Y Euro. Leah put the gray folder under her arm. Y Euro. A Tonite family prepared a legal release without explaining its effect. So yes, we are going to slow down and use grown-up procedures. Y Euro. I walked out the back door into the alley, past the empty flour sacks and the mop bucket, with the cold metal of my car key pressed into my palm. The alley behind the bakery smelled like wet cardboard, lemon floor cleaner, and the last batch of cinnamon glaze cooling somewhere inside. My old Corolla was parked crooked by the dumpster because I had arrived before sunrise and squeezed in beside the linen truck. The pink envelope was in the glove compartment under my tire gauge and a stack of napkins from Donalia Euro-S Diner. I opened the passenger door and leaned across the seat. My hands were shaking enough that I dropped the napkins on the floor mat, and for one stupid second I started gathering them instead of grabbing the thing Leah had asked for. Then I heard the back door open behind me. Why Euro Sienna? Why Euro? It was Oscar. He stood in the doorway with his brown cardigan buttoned wrong and his phone in one hand. The blue glow lit the underside of his chin. Why Euro Uthia Euro retelling people Ita? Euro SA permitting delay. Why Euro, he said quietly. I pulled the envelope free. Grandma Euro-S handwriting was on the front because I had reused one of her old stationery envelopes. Garden Club Raffle, July. She had written in the corner years ago. Under that, in my pen, I had written Hobart Deposit, Proof Box, Bixer Paddle, Sheet Pans. Why Euro PO is saying that? Why Euro, I asked. Why Euro POG? Morsley, Mora is at the coffee bar with Rob. Paige was still live when Leah said postponed. Then she turned the camera toward the pastry case and told everyone there was a last-minute municipal form. He looked back over his shoulder. Why Euro AS? He just ended it. Why Euro AS? I shut the car door with my hip and locked it. Why Euro Udid? She'll say my name. Why Euro? Why Euro no? She said. Why Euro? Some people don't Euro T understand how many details go into opening a legacy business. Why Euro then? She smiled at the phone like she was thanking a sponsor. Why Euro? I pressed the envelope against my coat. Through the small wired glass window in the back door, I could see the kitchen changing from a party room into evidence. The long prep table still had Grandma Euro-S lemon bars on silver trays, but now plastic wraps sagged over them. Someone had stacked half-empty pastry boxes beside the industrial sink. The launch programs were in a messy pile near the guest book, their cream covers bent from people folding them into purses. Inside, the sound had thinned out. No applause, no music from Paige Euro-S speaker. Just chairs scraping, bakery tissue crinkling, and Mora Euro-S voice traveling in pieces. Why Euro JOF? Course we Euro LL honor all pre-orders. Why Euro? Why Euro no? The recipes are Grandma Euro-S. Why Euro? Why Euro? Just a paperwork issue. Why Euro? Leah was standing beside the register with her gray folder on the counter. She had taken off her glasses and was cleaning them with the corner of her scarf. When she saw the envelope, she put the glasses back on. Why Euro Keek? It's sealed for the moment. Why Euro, she said. Why Euro JY Euro LL? Make a simple inventory before anything leaves your hands. Why Euro? Mora crossed the dining area fast, carrying the clipboard from the check-in table. Her lipstick had worn off in the center, and there was a coffee splash on her sleeve. She stopped 2 feet from me, close enough that I could smell peppermint gum. Why Euro Sienna? This is enough. Why Euro, she said. Why Euro Jugists are leaving confused. Paige is being humiliated online. Your grandma there, Euro's name is on that awning. Why Euro? I looked past her. Paige stood near the front window with her ring light folded under one arm. Her phone was still in her hand. Screen open to comments. A white pastry box sat on the window ledge beside her, half filled with croissants people had decided not to eat there. Leah stepped between Mora and the envelope without touching either of us. Why Euro Umora Dona? Euro T asked her for documents in the middle of the room. Why Euro Gia, Euro M? Asking my niece to stop escalating a misunderstanding. Why Euro Oscar came in behind me and let the back door close. Why Euro Umora? I was at the January tests. Why Euro, he said. Why I watched Sienna adjust the orange roll dough 3 Saturdays in a row. I saw the cost sheet taped to the proofing cabinet. Why Euro? Rob, my uncle, looked up from a table where he had been collecting donation cards. Why Euro Wasker? With respect, families share recipes. Oscara Euro-S mouth tightened. Why Euro families Dona Euro T usually charge investors for the version the quiet girl perfected at 4:30 in the morning. Why Euro? A woman in a navy coat by the coffee station paused with 2 box G copyright Claire's in her hands. I recognized her from the printed seating chart as Mrs. Feld, one of the local business association guests. She looked from Oscar to the programs on the counter, then set 1 G copyright Claire box back down. Mora noticed her voice dropped. Why Eurotius is exactly why I wanted the volunteer release signed before doors opened. Why Euro? Leah Euro-S pen stopped moving over her legal pad. I did not answer Mora. I placed the pink envelope on the register counter in front of Leah, flap facing down, and kept 2 fingers on it until Leah nodded. €1 received from Sienna Vale at 7:46 p.m. Leah said, writing the time. €1 pink stationery envelope, labeled with equipment items, unopened. €1 Paige gave a short laugh from the window. €1 pair, we seriously doing crime show timestamps now. €1 no. €1 Leah said. €1 JY redoing business records. €1 through the front glass. Guests crossed the sidewalk under the green awning that read Vale Memorial Bakery in gold letters. Several carried half-boxed pastries. One man held the launch program open while he talked to his wife, his finger resting on the line where my name sat under family volunteers. I watched him fold it once and tuck it into his coat pocket. Leah waited until the last guest cleared the threshold before she moved the pink envelope from the counter to the stainless prep table. The bakery smelled like cooling butter and printer ink. Someone had stacked the leftover launch programs beside the register, and the top one still had Paige Euro's picture on the front, smiling under Grandma Euro's old rolling pin. It was 8:12 p.m. when Leah took out her phone and photographed the envelope from both sides. €1 Umora. €1, she said. €1 Gia M opening this now. €1 welcome to stand here and watch. €1. Aunt Mara had taken off her cream blazer and draped it over one arm. Without it, she looked less like the woman from the investor packet and more like the aunt who used to check the oven light at Thanksgiving. She rubbed one finger along her bracelet clasp. €1 Tethys is unnecessary. €1, she said. YWE all know wada euro s in there. €1. Why no, Leah answered. YWE know what you said was in there. €1. Oscar stood near the proofing cabinet, holding his flat cap in both hands. Paige was behind the coffee station with her phone face down beside a stack of napkins. For once, she was not speaking to it. Leah slit the envelope with a paring knife from the utensil cup, careful not to cut the papers inside. She pulled out the first receipt and set it flat. €1 Babaka Euro S Depot. €1 she read. €1 January 19. Used 30-quart mixer, paid with Visa, ending in 4,412. Buyer, Sienna Vale. €1 I knew that receipt. I remembered the cold metal counter at Bacara Euro S Depot and the way I had counted my tip money twice before putting my card into the reader. The salesman had taped a spare paddle attachment to the box because Oscar told him the bowl had a dent near the handle. Leah placed the receipt in a clear sleeve from her accordion folder. The second paper was for 2 sheet pan racks from March 3rd. The third was a handwritten invoice for a replacement oven gasket with Oscar's name as the installer and mine as the payer. Under that was a pale yellow copy of a scale purchase. The model number circled in my handwriting because Grandma Euro's almond braid depended on grams, not scoops and wishes. Paige picked up a dish towel and folded it into a square she did not need. Mara looked toward the front windows. The gold letters on the awning reflected backward in the glass. €1 families help each other. €1, she said quietly. €1 Jew were helping. €1. I stared at the scale receipt. There was a tiny grease mark on the corner from the day Oscar and I tested the pecan filling 3 times because the first batch leaked through the braid. I had gone home that night smelling like burnt sugar, and I had still typed the cost sheet before bed. €1 yai did help. €1 I said. My voice came out low, so I made myself repeat it. I helped build something that is different from donating it. Leah looked at me for a second, then wrote that sentence on her yellow legal pad with the time next to it. Oscar nodded once. No one in my family had ever said recipes were property when Grandma was alive. They were index cards in a tin, pencil notes in margins, measuring cups with chipped handles. They were also labor. They were grocery receipts, failed batches, rent for test kitchen hours, text messages at 5:04 a.m. asking Oscar if yeast could be saved after a power outage. I had treated all of that as proof, only after Mora turned it into a story where my name belonged under volunteers. That is the part I keep turning over. If you love a recipe, are you supposed to hand over the right to protect it? If grief is real, does that make paperwork rude? I used to think asking those questions made me greedy. Standing there beside the clear sleeves and the yellow pad, I finally saw how convenient that fear had been for everyone else. If you have ever been told that protecting your work means you do not love your family, tell me what object proved the truth for you. Mine was a scale receipt with a grease mark on the corner. At 8:26 p.m., Leah slid the receipts into order and said, €1 annexed. I need the lease witness email printed, and I need everyone to stop touching the programs. Y Euro. Page A Euro S phone buzzed against the coffee station. She looked at the screen, then at Mora. Y Euro Yida, Euro S, the investor group chat. Y Euro, she said. Y Euro Uthia Euro reasking. Why people online are saying Sienna paid for the equipment. Y Euro, Paige did not answer the investor chat in front of Leah. She turned the screen down on the coffee station, which was the first sensible thing I had seen her do all day. Leah pointed at the printer behind the office door. Y Euro Glee's witness email. Now, please. Y Euro. Oscar went with me because my hands were still dusty from the flour bin and the pink envelope. The office smelled like toner and burnt coffee. I logged into Grandma Euro's old desktop at 8:31 p.m., opened the email folder labeled Build Out, and found the message from Leah Mercer, dated February 4th at 6:18 a.m. Subject line, Y Euro Glee's walkthrough. Sienna and Mora present. Y Euro. I printed 3 copies. The email said Leah had witnessed Mora asked me to bring my revised roll formula and equipment list to the lease meeting because Y Euro Sienna has been handling the working recipes and numbers. Y Euro, it was one sentence. Plain as a receipt. And somehow harder for Mora to smooth over than any argument I could make. Leah took the pages from the printer tray and clipped them to her yellow legal pad. That was the last night I stood inside the Memorial Bakery while it still had the opening flowers on the counter. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday morning at 9:10, a certified letter arrived at my apartment in a flat white envelope. Leah had warned me it was coming, but my fingers still picked at the corner before I opened it. It was from Mora Euro's lawyer, a man named Dennis R. Calder, and the letter said the bakery acknowledged my Y Euro informal recipe support a Euro but denied any ownership interest. It offered to reimburse me for Y Euro usertain household baking items, mistakenly interpreted as business equipment. Y Euro household baking items. I put the letter on my kitchen table beside my bank statement and took a photo before I touched anything else. The stand mixer payment alone had come out of my debit account in 2 installments, marked commercial deposit and final balance. The sheet pan racks were delivered to the bakery address, not my apartment. The oven gasket invoice listed Oscar Euro's installation time and Mora Euro's signature at the bottom in blue ink. At 9:28, I forwarded the letter to Leah with the subject line, Y Euro Q Calder letter received. Her reply came at 9:43. Y Euro Dodo not respond directly. Bring originals Friday. Also, they want to return the mixer. Y Euro. I stared at that sentence longer than I meant to. Return the mixer sounded simple, as if it had not spent months taking Grandma Euro's dough from trial batch to launch batch, as if the bowl did not have a strip of blue tape on the handle with my handwriting on it. On Friday, Leah Euro's office conference table was covered with labeled folders. Programs, receipts, emails, notebooks, release. She had 2 copies of a response letter ready, and beside them was a photograph someone had taken of the launch program. There I was, printed under family volunteers, between Uncle Rob, who parked cars, and Paige Euro's roommate, who tied ribbon around cookie boxers. Leah tapped the program with her pen. Y Euro Uthi corrected the website this morning. Y Euro, I pulled up the bakery page on my phone. The Y Euro Grandma Euro's original Recipes a Euro paragraph was gone. In its place, under a photo of Paige holding a tray of cinnamon nuts, it said, Y Euro Select launch recipes were developed and tested by Sienna Vale, with assistance from Oscar Lynn. My name looked strange there. Too formal, too exposed. I read it twice. Oscar leaned over my shoulder and said, Y Euro Uthi forgot cost sheets. Y Euro Leah almost smiled. Y Euro Uthi did not forget. They are avoiding the word business. Y Euro. The equipment dispute dragged through the next 2 letters. Mara wanted to send the mixer, scale, and 2 racks to my apartment. Y Euro pin full satisfaction of any claim. Y Euro Leah wrote back that physical return did not erase documented contribution. Use or public mislabeling. Dennis Calder replied with a sentence about preserving family harmony. Leah circled it and wrote, Y Euro Women's concern, not legal position, Y Euro in the margin. After that, the family went quiet. No Sunday dinner texts, no bakery group updates. Aunt Mora stopped tagging Grandma Euro's old account in posts. Paige kept uploading pastries, but the captions changed. Y Euro a morning bake. Y Euro Jaft open hours. Y Euro a fresh lemon bars. No more heritage. No more built by family. No more volunteer story. The silence should have felt like relief. Mostly, it felt like checking a hallway after someone has slammed a door. You keep expecting another sound. On the fourth week, I stopped by Leah Euro's office with the original scale receipt sealed in a plastic sleeve. She added it to the evidence binder and handed me a photocopy for my own file. Why Euro keep this somewhere boring? Why Euro, she said. Why Euro ubbering places, preserve things. Why Euro? So I put my copy in a blue folder between my car insurance and my dental bill. That was where my proof lived now. Not in a speech, not in a family argument, not under a glass bakery case. Just paper, dates, signatures, and the part of Grandma Euro's recipes I had finally stopped apologizing for protecting. 2 days after I put the blue folder in the filing crate, I drove to Grandma Euro's house for the first time since the opening. It was Thursday, 6:40 in the evening, and the porch light over the side door kept flickering because no one had replaced the bulb. The key was still under the chipped ceramic frog by the planter, which made me angry for a practical reason before I had room for any other feeling. Half the family had been in and out of that house since the funeral, and nobody had thought to move the key. I went in through the kitchen. The room smelled like dust, lemon cleaner, and old flour. Someone had cleared the counter where Grandma used to keep the red canister set, but the peg rack still held her measuring spoons. The smallest one, the quarter teaspoon, hung crooked on its hook. I fixed it with one finger. I had come for the recipe tins Leah wanted me to check. We already had my notebooks and Oscar Euro's test pages, but Leah had asked, why Euro pair are there any original cards that connect your versions to your grandmother Euro's versions? Even marginal notes help. Why Euro? The word why Euro. Marginella Euro stayed with me because that was where Grandma used to write the useful things. Not in the title, not in the ingredient list. Along the edges, I opened the pantry door and pulled down the old blue cookie tin from the second shelf. It had a winter village painted on it, even though Grandma used it year-round. Inside were index cards wrapped in rubber bands so old they broke as soon as I touched them. I sat at the kitchen table and started sorting. Molasses, crinkles, lemon milk bread, apricot thumbprints, funeral coffee cake, which had made me laugh when I was 13 because Grandma said, why Euro every family needs one cake that can survive bad news and bad coffee. Why Euro? At 7:12, I found the card. It was 4 honey cream rolls written in Grandma Euro's narrow blue cursive. The top corner had a grease stain shaped like a thumbprint. Under the glaze instructions, in pencil, she had written, why Euro Sienna, test with less yeast if making a head. Sweet things turn mean when rushed. Dona Euro tea, let sweet things make people dishonest. Why Euro? I read it twice. Then a third time, because the note had my name in it. It was not a legal document. It did not have a signature block or a witness line. It did not say partnership, ownership, or invoice. But it placed me in the work long before the bakery website tried to make me a volunteer in hindsight. I took a photo with my phone on the table under the overhead light. Then I turned on Grandma Euro's old desk lamp from the living room and took another one, because the pencil showed better from the side. I put a clean sheet of printer paper behind the card and photographed the front, the back, and the edge where her pencil had pressed hard enough to leave grooves. My hands were steady until I put it in an envelope. I found a box of Grandma Euro's old Christmas card envelopes in the buffet drawer. On the front, I wrote, why Euro honey cream rolls card, Grandma Euro's note to Sienna, found at house. Thursday, 7:12 p.m., then I stopped, added the date, and initialed the flap because Leah had taught me to make even ordinary handling less messy. Before I left, I checked the dining room. The long table was covered in things people had half sorted and abandoned. A stack of condolence cards, a plastic bag of doilies, 2 framed photographs turned face down. At the far end sat a cardboard Bankera Euro's box labeled Y Euro Bay Bakery Opening. Extra Euro in page A Euro's handwriting. I should have walked away from it. Instead, I lifted the lid. Inside were leftover launch programs, the same cream paper with Grandma Euro's face on the front, and my name tucked under Y Euro Family Volunteers Euro on page 3. There were also unused menu cards, a ribbon spool, and a printed seating chart with sponsor names highlighted in yellow. Near the bottom was a folder marked Y Euro Lynn Vester packet. Revised, Y Euro? I did not take it. I took photos of the folder where it sat, the label, and the first page visible inside. The top page had a paragraph titled Y Euro A Founding Family Story. Y Euro, the first sentence read, Y Euro PPH Veiled developed the memorial menu from beloved family recipes, with volunteer support from relatives. Y volunteer support. The same phrase from the letter, cleaned up for investors. I closed the box and stood there with Grandma Yura's recipe card in my purse and that sentence on my phone. On the drive home, I stopped at a gas station on Benton Road because I did not want to pull into my apartment lot with my hands shaking. I bought a bottle of water, kept the receipt without meaning to, and sat under the white canopy lights while I emailed Leah the photos. Subject line, Y grandma card and investor wording. Y. Leah replied at 8:36. Y Dodo not discuss this with family tonight. Bring the card tomorrow. The investor packet language matters. Y. I put the phone face down in the cup holder and looked at the envelope on the passenger seat. Grandma had written that sweet things could turn mean when rushed. Maura had rushed grief into a brand. Paige had rushed recipes into a launch menu. And I had almost rushed myself into silence because I was afraid of sounding greedy. The card did not make me louder. It made me more careful. On Monday morning, I met Leah Mercer at her office above the insurance agency on Beale Street. The hallway smelled like toner and raincoats. I brought the envelope with Grandma Euro's honey cream rolls card, the photos of the investor packet, my equipment receipts, and the recipe notebooks in a blue canvas tote that had a flower thumbprint on one handle. Leah did not make a speech. She put on reading glasses, opened a yellow legal pad, and made 3 columns. Y recipes. Y she said, writing the word at the top of the first column. Y equipment. Public claims. Y she tapped the investor packet photo with the back of her pen. Y TCS matters because it was prepared for people who might put money in. We are not going to threaten anyone wildly. We are going to be accurate. Y oh, I liked that word. Accurate. It sounded like weighing butter. By 9:40, she had drafted a short letter asking Maura and Paige to stop using any recipes traced to my notebooks, remove the volunteer language from investor materials, and preserve records related to the lease, launch program, payments, and menu development. She copied Oscar as a recipe testing witness only after asking me twice if I was comfortable with that. Y Yidona. T want him pulled into a family fight. Y I said. Y ha already is. Y Leah said, softer. Y Theus gives him a clean roll. Witness, not soldier. Y before I left, she slid a second sheet across the desk. Y if you want to sell anything yourself, do it clean. Cottage food, registration, labels, pre-order records, separate bank account, no confusion with the Memorial Bakery name. Y the word sell made me pause. I had been testing and costing for so long that charging people still felt like stepping onto someone else's floor. Leah noticed, Y small is allowed. Sienna? At 11:15, I walked to First County Bank and opened a basic business checking account with $60 from my paycheck. The teller, Mr. Givens, asked for a name. I had written 3 options on a receipt from the bus stop coffee stand. Vale Kitchen felt too close to the argument. Grandma anything felt wrong, like I was grabbing her apron while everyone watched. Y Saturday batch. Y I said finally. Mr. Givens typed it in. Y Bay Bakery. Y weekend pre-orders. Y I said. Y small. Y He nodded like small was a normal size. That afternoon, Oscar met me behind the community center, where the county rented the inspected kitchen to church groups and food vendors. He had already called the coordinator, Mrs. Patel, who kept a clipboard by the stainless sink and wore purple reading glasses on a chain. Y Jua LL need your time block, written in blue. Y she said, handing me a pen. Y Saturdays 5 to 9 in the morning, starting this week. Oven, 2 sticks a little, Dona T slam it. Refrigerator shelf is marked with tape. No unlabeled containers. Oscar paid for the first hour before I could stop him. Y Gia M paying you back. Y I said. He put the receipt in my hand. Y Tethan, write it in your cost sheet. Y so I did. Rental kitchen, first hour, $18. Ode to Oscar Lynn. We spent Saturday morning making only 12 boxers. For honey cream rolls in each. Plain white labels with ingredients. Allergens, date, and Saturday batch, in small letters. Oscar stood at the far table checking the proof on the dough while I filled the boxers. No ribbon, no portrait of Grandma, no story printed on the lid. At 8:32, my phone buzzed with the first pickup message from Mrs. Klein, one of Oscar's old customers. IA parked by the side door. Cash or card? I looked at Oscar till he wiped his hands on a towel. Why Euro Lancer like a business? Why Euro? I typed, card is fine. IA Euro LL, bring the receipt. By 9:05, the boxers were gone. There were only 3 crumbs on the cooling rack, 2 dirty sheet pans, a Square Reader receipt email, and a handwritten pre-order list with 12 names crossed off. I took a photo of the clean table before we left because I wanted a record of the thing exactly as it was. Outside, the air smelled like wet pavement and sugar. Oscar locked the kitchen door and handed the key back through the office slot. Why Euro next week? Why Euro, he asked. I looked at the clipboard inside the glass, at my name written in blue ink for one more Saturday. Why Euro next week? Why Euro, I said. Why Euro, same 12. Maybe 16 if the oven behaves. Why Euro? At home, there was a voicemail from Maura waiting on my phone. I did not play it in the hallway. I put my tote on the table, washed my hands, opened my cost sheet, and entered the morning sales first. I finished the sales entry before I touched the voicemail. 12 boxes, $216 gross, $71.40 in ingredients and packaging, $30 for kitchen time, $8 in card fees. I typed the numbers into the Saturday batch spreadsheet and clipped the square report to the back of the printed pre-order list. Oscar had written why Euro Geo good crumb. Do not rush second proof a Euro on a sticky note and stuck it to my cooling log. I left it there. Then I played Maura's message on speaker with my phone flat on the kitchen table beside the flour-dusted calculator. Why Euro Sienna Eta Euro S your Aunt Maura? I got a letter from that attorney. I do not Euro T appreciate being threatened over family recipes. Paige is very upset. Investors are confused. If you wanted credit, you could have asked privately before embarrassing us. Call me today. Why Euro? There was a pause at the end, like she had almost added something softer and decided against it. I saved the voicemail. I emailed the file to Leah with the subject line, Why Euro Umora response after letter. Why Euro then wrote 3 sentences back to my aunt. Maura. I received your voicemail. Please direct any business questions to Leah Mercer. I am not signing the volunteer release, and I do not consent to my recipe work, receipts, or name being used in your bakery materials. I read it twice, took out the word why Euro sorry, why Euro, and pressed send. That night, I opened the plastic bin from Grandma Euro's pantry again. The notebooks were still in their sleeves. The receipt for the used Hobart bowl was still creased down the middle. The partnership note still had Grandma Euro's uneven signature and my neat little cost breakdown on the back. I did not frame any of it. I did not turn it into a shrine. I put copies in a fireproof envelope, wrote Why Euro a recipe and equipment records a Euro on the tab, and slid it onto the top shelf of my closet. 2 weeks later, the Memorial Bakery changed its website. Oscar noticed first. He texted me a screenshot at 6:12 a.m. before my shift at the Kaffa copyright. The sentence about why Euro 3 generations of Vale women creating every recipe to get through a Euro was gone. Paige Euro's video was still there, smiling in a cream cardigan. But the caption now said, Why Euro, inspired by Grandma Volia, Euro's kitchen. Why Euro my name was not on it. For once, my name not being there was the cleanest version of the truth they were willing to print. Leah said the correction was partial. She sent one more letter about the launch program and the volunteer release. I kept the original program in a folder anyway, the one that had placed me under Why Euro Family Volunteersa. Euro between Cousin Brett, who carried chairs, and Aunt Nina, who arranged flowers. I kept it because it reminded me how easy it is for people to make labor look like love when the worker is too polite to object. Saturday batch stayed small. 16 boxes became 18, then 20, and I stopped there because the community kitchen only gave me 3 hours on Saturdays. My labels listed every allergen. My invoices matched my bank deposits. When someone asked if my cookies were Why Euro, the same ones from Grandma Volea, Euro's Bakery, Why Euro, I said, Why Euro Uthi come from my testing records with my grandmother, and I sell them under my own name. The first time I said it without lowering my voice, Oscar was wiping trays at the sink. He looked over and nodded once, like that sentence had finally proofed long enough. I still miss Grandma in ordinary places. The spice aisle, the squeak of an oven door, the way a pencil feels behind my ear when I am adding butter prices. Grief did not give my aunt permission to turn my work into decoration. Family did not make a release form harmless. Peace would have cost me my recipes, my receipts, and the part of me that was finally willing to be seen. So I did not stop loving them all at once. I stopped handing them the clipboard. That is the end of my story. If you had been standing at that memorial opening with the volunteer release in front of you, would you have signed it for peace or stopped the opening until the recipe receipts were read? Tell me in the comments, and if you want more stories about family, proof, and the cost of staying quiet, subscribe and turn on notifications. IA Euro LL put the list of the key documents, the launch program, the equipment receipts, the lease witness email, and the partnership note in the description.